Congratulations on making it to June. And yes, for a lot of you, you deserve that congrats because May might have been the hardest month of this year. And that's because not only were we experiencing a Mercury retrograde in Gemini that moved back to Taurus, and actually as I'm recording this, Mercury is still retrograde, which means we might have some disruptions, some noise. So I apologize for any of that, but I'm gonna do my best to get all the way through this and have this video out for you guys. But that said, in May, we had Mercury retrograde, Pluto was retrograde, and of course, as you know, the most intense part of May was that we had the first eclipse season of this year. Not only was this the first eclipse season of 2022, but this was the first eclipse season in Taurus and Scorpio in a long time. And so it introduced themes that are going to play out for the rest of 2022 and into 2023. So this is a really good time as we're beginning June to think about what happened in your life in May, because whatever happened is very important, and you're going to see those themes come back up at the end of this year in October and November. But from now until then, we are clear with a Mercury retrograde, and this is the time to fully embrace a new beginning, not only because we're out of eclipse season and because we're going into the summer, but because Jupiter is in Aries, and this is our first month where we get to experience that momentum without Mercury retrograde. So Jupiter entered Aries on May 10th, and this is a big deal because Jupiter is a planet of growth, expansion. It takes about a year to move through each sign, and it takes about 10 years to get all the way back around to each sign. And so what this means is that this is going to represent a major new cycle for a lot of people, not only because of that, but also because Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. It's a fire sign, it's a cardinal sign. So Aries is about moving forward, trying new things, putting yourself out there, and Jupiter loves all those things as well. And so for a lot of people, you're stepping into a brand new cycle. But because on May 10th, we also had Mercury go retrograde, we've not gotten to experience this momentum yet. And so in June, we're going to be able to experience more of that Jupiter energy, which means that it's about moving forward now and not moving backwards. That was what May was about. May was about looking into the past, seeing what has happened, seeing what you've moved on from, perhaps experiencing some major life changes and events that were here to show you something about your life, about yourself, and about your future. But again, for a lot of people, because Mercury was retrograde, it could feel like you were moving backwards, or it could feel like you weren't moving forward. But in June, that is going to be cleared out. And now Jupiter is going to be in Aries for most of this year. It is going to go retrograde at the end of July, and by the end of this year, in October, November, Jupiter will go back into Pisces for a little bit. But then it's going to move forward into Aries again into 2023. And so this is really a major time of new beginnings, especially for fire signs. So if you're an Aries, Sagittarius, or Leo placement, you're going to really be feeling the momentum this month in June. Now, not only is that true because Jupiter is in Aries and Mercury is no longer retrograde, but we are also joined by Mars in Aries this month. And Mars rules Aries, which means that it's at home, it's going to feel very powerful, and it's going to ask you to move forward. But it may be a little bit hard as we kick off this month because again, in May, it was about looking backwards. And so because Mercury retrograde is over, but we're still in that shadow period, there may be some picking up the pieces this month that needs to be done. But by the end of June, a lot of you are going to have a very clear understanding of the new chapter that you're in and the things that maybe you had to leave behind or get closure on so that you could feel comfortable and confident in starting a new beginning. I'm going to talk about all of the transits that we have going on this month, and then I'm going to get into the horoscopes. So if you would like to jump ahead and just see your horoscope, you can go look at the timestamps below and check out your sign. But let's start with talking about all of the transits that we have going on. Again, I want to tell you that June is going to be a much easier month for a lot of people than May was, because in May, eclipse season, the retrogrades, there just wasn't a lot of sense in what was going on. So you may have felt confused or conflicted. You may have not known what was going to happen next, and this can cause some fear, some paranoia. The eclipse season that we had in Taurus and Scorpio was really about understanding what it is that you fear, and also what fear itself is. The South Node's in Scorpio, and we had the full lunar eclipse in Scorpio on May 15th and May 16th. And this was illuminating the fears in our lives. And so for a lot of people, you may have realized that there was something in your life holding you back, or maybe you were holding yourself back from something. And it could have seemed like there were real things outside of you that were causing this. But this month is going to show you that a lot of the things that may be holding you back are actually just in your head, or things that you're afraid of. May was also here to show you how you might be being distracted by things that are important to you in your life. Sometimes when we have so many things going on, we can lose sight of what is actually important to us. But June is about getting clear on where you're going and what steps you need to take to move forward so that you can start to remove any distractions that are in your path. And it doesn't always have to be so big and eventful. Sometimes it can actually be very simple. In fact, one of the things that I recommend for this month in June is learning how to simplify the complications in your life. Because often the complications that are going on have more to do with what is going on inside of us, and again, less to do with what's going on outside of us. But if you believe in some of the things that I do, you might also understand that the things that we create, or the things that go on inside of us, often reflect what shows up outside of us. And so if anything that did come into your path in May, maybe it threw you a bit off, maybe it made you question what you want, maybe it made you question where you're going, maybe it presented you with some very difficult emotions that you had to work through. But I invite you to really be grateful for anything that has happened recently, because in June there's going to be some clarity as to why things have played out, and you may see that the bigger picture is a lot more beautiful than you thought, but you were only focusing on one part of that picture. And when you're only looking at one piece of a puzzle, it's not going to make sense. But when you start to look at the whole puzzle, when you start to look at the whole picture, then you can understand how even the bad sides, even the ugly parts, all create a beautiful, cohesive image in the end. If you watched my May video, you probably heard me talk about how a big theme in May was extremes. And not just extremes in life, but looking at the contrast of what extremes are. How if you have a pendulum swinging and it's always going from one side, then it's going to swing back to the other. But if you are figuring out how to keep that pendulum in between the extremes, that's where we start to find balance. That's where we start to see that we don't have to swing so far in one direction, because if we're swinging this way, we're always going to swing back to the other end. And June is here to show you that if you've been facing some extremes in your life, whether they're by your own doing, or whether they are just from things that have had to happen in your life, things that are even unexplainable, endings, loss, grief, these are a lot of things people have been dealing with in May. June is going to show you that those extremes are here to show you that when you can see the hard things in life, when you can understand the pain of life, this gives you more perception to then also understand the power that you have, also understand the passion that you have for the things that you do want. And that's where it's not always bad to be on an extreme. It's not always bad to be swinging from one end to the other, but for a lot of people, you might just be noticing that you're ready to have a more simplified life, a more simplified understanding of things. You're ready to not have as much emotional turbulence, emotional ups and downs. June is going to invite you to step into a new perspective in order to do this. It's going to ask you to get things in order so that you know what it is you're focused on, and so that you can simplify the things that you do not need to focus on. So for instance, if there is something that has been emotionally hanging on to you, or something that you've been hanging on to emotionally, June is going to help you to clear those things out and to show you that it's okay to let things go. It's okay to feel angry and then release that feeling. It's okay to feel sad and then release that feeling. We're allowed to have a spectrum of emotions and experiences that do not require us to stay in a negative or even in a positive emotion just because we had to experience it once. So again, you know, some of you may have had to go through some major changes in your life in May. Again, endings, loss, and some things may be hard to put a name on it or give meaning to it right now because you don't know why it's happened. And when we think that we don't know why something's happened, or when we feel that there's unexplainable things, it can feel maybe like the only way we can control something is by holding on to the emotion that we have about that situation. It's like, well, if I can't explain why this happened, I'm just going to hold on to the grief until I have an answer. I'm just going to hold on to the anger until I have clarity. And there's nothing wrong with that, because that is how we process emotions, by letting ourselves feel them. But that's the key, is that we have to be able to feel them. If we're just hanging on to it and not actually going into that emotion and figuring out the answers that are within those emotions, then it can feel like we are carrying that emotion, that anger, that resentment, that fear with us into new beginnings. And again, for a lot of people, this month in June is all about new beginnings. But the key here is you don't want to carry the loss with you into this new beginning. You don't want to carry those negative emotions with you into a positive new beginning. Now, I'm not here to say, again, that we're supposed to only experience good things or only be positive all the time. That's not the message, but rather that you have permission this month to look at the past as the past. You have permission this month to leave your pain behind. You have permission this month to start over. And Jupiter in Aries wants you to try again. It wants you to put yourself out there. It wants you to look at all the different paths that are available to you. If you feel like you've been pressured to make a decision, or you had to do something that was out of fear thinking, if you had to just do something spontaneously, it can feel like you're stuck in that path because you made a decision in a moment and there's no going back. But Jupiter in Aries is here to show us this month that actually the back is behind us, the past is behind us, and there's actually only space to move forward now, which means if you are questioning whether you should go down a path that you've already been down, or if you're wondering why you feel so stuck in a decision you've made, this month in June is here to show you that there's actually much more opportunity available to you than you saw before. And the only way to see that, though, is to be open-minded enough to let those options, let those opportunities present themselves to you. But again, if you're holding on to something that's already happened, if you're holding on to something that's already ended, then it can feel like you're not allowed to step into happiness. You're not allowed to step into a new beginning. And the other side of this is that sometimes when we go through very difficult things, and let's say we are hurt, and something unexpected happens, or we had these expectations for something to go really well, and then those expectations are not met, there can be fear about moving forward again because you don't want to get hurt in the same way. You don't want to repeat that cycle. You don't want to go through that again. But that's why this month is really about observing what path you are on and realizing that things do not have to repeat themselves again if you do not let that happen. Now, I'm not, again, saying that it's all up to you. It's all up to us. There's a lot of beautiful synchronicities in the world that show us that sometimes things are just out of our control, and when we give up that control, there's actually a beautiful surrender that can happen. But June, because we are dealing with Mars in Aries and Jupiter in Aries, it's about action. It's about taking action, taking movement, and being in that momentum, which means that yes, you might have to do something you've never done before this month. You might have to put yourself out there in a new way. You might have to take the path less traveled. You might have to put yourself in a situation that makes you uncomfortable. But that's why I'm here to tell you that if you are doing that, it's going to pay off. It's going to show you that there is a new path that you did not see before. Saturn is going retrograde this month on June 4th. This is the day after Mercury goes direct on June 3rd, which means that right after we get out of this Mercury retrograde, we're going into a Saturn retrograde. But don't fear, it's not going to be a bunch of chaos. Now, if you're a Capricorn or Aquarius placement, you are going to be feeling this a bit more, especially if you're a rising Capricorn or Aquarius. But in general, when we're dealing with Saturn retrogrades, which do happen just about every year, this is about things that are much more bigger picture. This is about things that play out over long periods of time. Saturn comes back around to each sign about every 30 years, which is a very long planetary cycle, much longer than Mercury. Mercury is moving very quickly through the signs, except for when it's retrograde. And so when we have like Mercury go retrograde, things are very obviously chaotic. It's like everything's on the surface, and you can see how things are not working out. You can see where things just are a mess. But when Saturn is retrograde, this is often where things are much more under the surface. There's a deeper layer to that retrograde. And Saturn is a planet of karma, it's a planet of cycles, it's a planet of time, it's a planet of discipline, it's a planet of responsibility. I could talk about Saturn for days. Saturn gets kind of a rep for being a negative planet, but Saturn is also about giving you rewards for the work that you have done. Saturn is about showing you what you no longer need to repeat so that you can step into a cycle that will reward you for the lessons you've learned. And so when we have Saturn go retrograde, it brings things back into our life so that we can see what we've moved on from. It can bring some tests or challenges up to the surface because it's asking you to not repeat a karmic cycle. As we're coming out of this Mercury retrograde, Mercury is going direct in Taurus at 26 degrees on June 3rd, and then it's going to move into Gemini again on June 13th. This is the day before we have a full moon in Sagittarius on June 14th. Gemini and Sagittarius are opposite signs, and Gemini is ruled by Mercury. And so when Mercury is direct and it moves back into Gemini on the 13th, there's going to be a natural understanding here. There's going to be things that start to really come together. But because Saturn is retrograde, this is about understanding that some of the most important things in our life are not always going to be evident, and they're not always going to be quick. And with Mercury going direct in Taurus, Taurus is not a sign of rushing. If you know a Taurus, you know not to rush them. Taurus likes to take their time. They like to see things from a further point of view so that they know what steps they have to take. Taurus is a very stable sign, and it does not want you to take the easy way out. It does not want you to take the quick route. It cares about quality. And so as we have Mercury going direct in Taurus until the 13th, it will be in Taurus. And this is when we have Saturn retrograde during this time. And so for the first half of June, there's going to just kind of be a reflection on May, on the things that have happened in your life, perhaps even for a very, very long time, again, because we're dealing with Saturn cycles. And so there's a sense for this first half of the month that you're in a new chapter, things are beginning in a new way, things are coming together in a new way, but because Saturn is retrograde, there's an importance on not going backwards, on not repeating a cycle. Now again, when we have planets retrograde, they are meant to take us backwards, but not so that we're repeating anything, rather that we understand we've already done it, we've already seen it, we've already learned that lesson, and we don't need to repeat it. Now, when Saturn is retrograde this month, there is an emphasis on understanding the importance of timing and understanding the importance of longevity as well, which means, you know, if you've had some things come up in your life recently that are just kind of slapping you on the wrist to say, hey, don't do that again, don't do that again, don't do that again. Well, when Saturn goes retrograde, it's going to start screaming that. It's like, don't do that again, because there's going to be consequences. There's going to be a cause and effect that may happen more obviously than before. Now, again, because this is going to be something that's more on a deep level, a lot of times this has to do with things that only you can feel or see. And because we have Mercury direct, the sun will also be in Gemini for most of this month. Happy Gemini season. This is a time when you might notice that things are showing up in your life, presenting themselves as new beginnings, but they're actually asking you to not repeat a cycle that you've already been through. And so for instance, as an example here, let's say that you are someone who's putting yourself out in the dating world and you got out of a relationship. A lot of people went through breakups at the end of last year into this year with that Venus retrograde. And so let's say that a lot of you might be putting yourself back out there, wanting to get out and date again. Well, imagine that you got very hurt, or you were in a situation that was not the best for you. Maybe you were the person in a situation who hurt someone else. As we go into June, there's going to be a lot of things that just start to quickly happen. Mercury's now direct, Gemini season going on, Jupiter in Aries, Mars in Aries. There's going to be a lot of things that happen very quickly here. But as things are happening quickly, there's also that silent whisper with Saturn retrograde that's asking you to pay attention, to notice that if someone or something is coming up, even if it's a new person, even if it's someone you've never met before, it's a whole new situation, even if it appears to be a new situation, what Saturn retrograde is going to ask you to identify is the patterns of that cycle that may be familiar, the patterns that you are playing out that may be repeated. And that's where Jupiter in Aries is asking us to step into new shoes and take a new walk, take a new path. But this isn't comfortable. It's like if you've ever, gone hiking and maybe wandered off a little bit, or you're on a road trip and you take a road that you've never gone down. There can be this fear. It's like, well, what if this road doesn't lead me where I want to go? Or, well, I always go down this path and I know where this leads and this is comfortable. I don't have to think too hard about it. So why would I go down a path I've never been down? But that's for this month. Saturn retrograde is not going to let you go down a path that you've already been down. Again, even if it appears to be new, a new person, a new place, a job, a new opportunity, you may get into that relationship, into that job, into that house and realize, oh my gosh, it looks different, but it's the exact same thing. And that's where Saturn retrograde is going to help you to identify this early on in the cycle, early on in your decision making, so that you don't get into it again and you don't have to repeat that cycle again. Cycles are really about understanding how at certain points of a cycle, you have an opportunity to break it, but at other points of a cycle, the only thing you can do is get through it. When studying karma, they show that the moment you can break a cycle is at the end of that cycle. Now, that's not always true, but the key is to understand that the best time to break a cycle is before you get into it or when you're coming out of another one. You don't want to have to try and break a cycle when you're in the middle of it. It's like the hardest time to end a relationship is probably when you're deeply attached to someone, or the hardest time to get out of a commitment is when you're in the middle of a contract, right? The easier time is before you sign on the dotted line or right when you get out of the contract. And so that's what Saturn retrograde is helping us with this month. It's not a bad thing. It's actually a very helpful thing. Again, especially for Capricorn and Aquarius placements, this is going to be an intent. It's not going to be a whisper. It's going to be more like a yell to say, you've already learned that lesson. You've already made it out of that cycle. It's like, congratulate yourself for making it out of that cycle. Congratulate yourself for making it out of that bad relationship, that bad job, or whatever it is. Realize that you played your own role in that, but there were also other roles that were played. And as you are now free, as you're now clear, as there's now new beginnings in the air, there can be a feeling of stagnancy. There can be a feeling of like nothing's moving forward, but this is actually when you have the freedom to step into a new cycle. But again, if we are acting out of fear, or if we're acting out of wanting to stay in our comfort zone, then that's where we can be freed from a cycle that we were in, but choose to repeat it because it's comfortable. Choose to go down that path again, even though it was even though we knew we didn't want to go down it, but because we're too afraid to try something new. And so all in all, the real message that I want to share with you guys this month is that June is about focusing forward. It's about moving forward. It's not to say that you can never look back and have your nostalgia and, reminisce on the good times and even the bad times, but that's what May was for. May was here to show you that your past, it happened. Everything has happened already. You can't go back and change it. You can't undo something, but what you can do is not repeat it, not put yourself in that same position. And I want to emphasize again kind of the importance of the underlying themes, as in the things that are not as obvious. It's very obvious, you know, if like your ex comes back into your life and they're like, hey, want to get back together? And you're like, yes or no. Or if an old coworker or an old boss hits you up and they're like, hey, you want to come back and work for us? Yes or no? Those are very obvious events. And that's likely what a lot of people experienced in May, were very obvious endings and new obvious beginnings or decisions. But when we're getting into this energy in June, there's going to be a lot of things that are less obvious. And that's why you have to listen to those whispers, because it's like if a new person comes into your life, you may think, yes, this is not my ex, so it's got to be better. But we often attract, you know, what we are or where we've been until we choose to break away from that. And so the same thing goes again for a job opportunity that can appear to be so glamorous, but then you get into it and you're like, wow, it's like that's my boss in a different body. Or, you know, I have all the same responsibilities I had in my last job, but I can make a little bit more money. Is it even worth it? You know, those are the kind of things that might be a little bit more subtle, but they're really important to pay attention to. But the beauty of this month is there's so much power here to energize you into a new beginning. This is what a lot of people might have been missing up until this point. Like, since November, a lot of people have likely felt like you haven't had the energy, you haven't had the clarity. And when we don't feel like we have our own alignment, when we have enough energy to move forward, if you feel like you don't have support in your life, this is when we want to cling on to things to keep us safe, cling on to comfort to keep us held, you know, repeat a cycle because we know what's there. It's like, well, at least I know the pain, at least I know how bad it is. That's better than going into something that's worse, right? But is it? Is it? There's going to be power though this month, because not only do we have most planets direct this month, but with Jupiter in Aries and Mars in Aries, again, lots of momentum. But even better, Mars is going to be in the sign it rules in Aries, Venus is going to be in the sign it rules in Taurus, and by June 13th, Mercury is also going to be in the sign it rules Gemini. And so we're going to have these planets all feeling very, very comfortable and powerful in their natural elements. And what this means for us is that you might feel more aligned in your own body, more aligned in your own mind, to the point where it's going to be a bit easier to pay attention to those subtle signs, to pay attention to how you're feeling, to pay attention to the thoughts that are good for you versus the thoughts that are hurting you. Whereas again, in May, that all might have been a jumbled mess. You might have not known if something was good or bad or left or right or up or down. Everything was just turned all over. And that's because a lot of the energy in May was dealing with Gemini too, not just the eclipse season, which does that, but the fact that we had Mercury retrograde in Gemini and then Gemini season started. Gemini is about looking at all the pieces. It's ruled by Mercury. It's an air sign. It's a mutable sign. It's not about having everything together. In fact, a lot of Geminis function very well when nothing is together yet, because that's what they can do best, is they can pull things together. They want to look at the ingredients and then make their own recipe, right? And not all Geminis, right? Some of them just want to go by the book. But the idea here is that there may have been things that happened recently that didn't make sense, but they presented you with the ingredients or the resources or the pieces of the puzzle. And in June, it's about bringing this together in your own way, through your own intuition, through your own mental clarity, through the way that you feel. I talked about feeling a lot in my May video because we were dealing with those Taurus and Scorpio eclipses. And again, the nodes are still in Taurus and Scorpio until 2023. So this is just a theme anyway this whole year. But it's about understanding, how do you feel? The body knows before we know often. And when we start to listen to our body, that's when we can start to hear those cues a lot quicker. It's like if you're in an environment and your body's telling you that it's not the place to be. Well, let's say in May, you might have been in certain situations, but because of all the pieces were up in the air, maybe you couldn't understand if this was a good feeling or a bad feeling. But now that these planets are going to be coming into alignment in June, and because we're going to start really feeling that momentum with Jupiter in Aries, there's a sense of getting clear on the intuition that your body is giving you, starting to understand how your body feels, how your body responds, how you are feeling about something. Identifying a feeling is very important. This is something that a lot of therapists work on, especially with children, is just learning how to identify feelings, like understanding if you're sad, happy, mad, resentful, if you are excited. These are the kind of important cues that we have to be able to listen to make clear decisions so that we feel confident about what we're doing. And again, a lot of people may feel like you haven't had that recently. Maybe your intuition has been off. But this month in June is going to show you that everything is coming together. Everything is going to work out, but it will require that you're paying attention to those signs in your life. It's going to require that you're paying attention to how you're feeling, because feeling and thinking are meant to work together. We can't just be in the head and we can't just be in the heart, because if they aren't working together, that's when we self-sabotage. That's when we work against ourselves. But again, with Mars at home in Aries, Venus at home in Taurus, by the middle of the month, around the Sagittarius full moon on June 14th, and I'll talk more about that, there's going to be a natural inclination to know what's for you and what's not for you. But the discernment is important. And that is why the lessons that you've learned since the beginning of this year, we had so many events going on at the beginning of this year astrologically, and we're just now getting into a more flow state as we go through the summer. I have good news that for a lot of people, the summer is going to be feeling much better than than things have been feeling since the beginning of this year. But again, this is where if you're hanging on to a negative emotion, if you had a bad day and then you're thinking that every day from here on out is going to be bad, well, then you're carrying that emotion, that extreme, into a flow state. And so you're going to flow with those negative emotions. But that's why I invite you to look at June as a clean slate. It's a new canvas. You get to paint the picture. But if you're always used to painting a tree and you have a new canvas in front of you and you're afraid to try something new, well, then you're probably going to get another picture of a tree. That's fine. But a lot of people this month are going to feel ready to try something new, ready to pick up a new paintbrush and to do a whole different picture, to see a whole different vision. Now, the difficulties that come with trying something new or putting yourself out there is it does require releasing the assumptions or the stories that you're telling yourself about who you are, or that other people are telling you about who they think you are. And this is where we get into the lunar cycles this month that are going to be very important for moving forward, for processing emotions, and for trying new things. And so I want to start with talking about looking at some of the transits. So just to kind of list out in a more of a big picture view of the transits that we have going on this month. So starting this month off, Mercury goes direct on June 3rd, Saturn goes retrograde on June 4th. We don't have too many major transits this month, which again is good, but Gemini is activated when Mercury re-enters it on June 13th. And then we also have the lunar cycles. And so I want to talk about these cycles now. So every month we have a new moon and a full moon, and this month we started the new moon we started the month with a new moon in Gemini. Now this was technically on May 30th at the end of May, but the energy of this is really kicking us into June. And so whenever you're watching this, you might still be reflecting on or coming down from that new moon energy. And for a lot of people, this was a very refreshing new moon. This is what we needed. We needed a new start. But again, it has to do with putting the pieces together in a new way, not repeating the same picture, not doing it again. And this new moon in Gemini that happened on May 30th was ruled by Mercury retrograde in Taurus. And so there is this feeling still of like, maybe you had an insight or an idea or a vision of what's ahead, but you're not there yet. Like maybe you saw a new path way in the distance, but you still have to walk there. You still have to get to that new path. Or maybe you realize that you actually want to get to a totally different destination where you thought you were going, you don't want to go there anymore. You want to go to a whole different place. Well, now you know that information, but knowing something is different than acting on it. And that's why, again, Mars being in Aries this month is the perfect momentum that we need to have the stamina, have the energy to see that path ahead and trust yourself enough to go down it. But here's the thing is that not everyone might want to follow you. Some people who were stuck with you on this path, or they're used to going on this path with you, they might question, well, why are you going to go on that path? It's way over there. You've never been down there before. You shouldn't do that. You should go down this path. And that's what might be difficult, especially at the beginning of this month, is realizing that the stories that you're hearing about your life and what's for you and what's not for you, those are important to identify right now, because stories really do create realities, and the stories we believe about ourselves, the beliefs we have about ourselves, create our reality. And Venus being in Taurus this month is going to help us to form new beliefs, to get clear on our values, because Venus is about values. It's also about attachments. And because it's in Taurus, it's going to feel very natural, which means, when you're naturally aligned, someone can put something in front of you and say, do you want this? And you'll say yes or no. You'll know. Your body will have a gut instinct. It's like, I forget what this test is called. If you know it, put it in the comments, but it's like a gut reaction test where you test your body to see the natural yes and the natural no. So it's like you can say, I want to do this, and your body will go forward for yes or backwards for no. And if you do that enough, I think a litmus test maybe, I think if you do that enough, you start to get very, very familiar with your body's response, with your body's reaction. And so that's going to be in our power this month with Venus and Taurus, meaning that there's going to be a lot of natural feeling that is here to direct you. So if your body is saying no to something, listen to it. If people are saying, hey, don't go down that path, but you know that you want to go down that path, and if your body's saying, yeah, go down that path, like that's the yes, follow the yes. That is what is important for you to pay attention to this month. But the voices in your head, the voices around you, the stories around you, they may not line up with what you're feeling. And that's why this month is about listening to what is pushing you forward, listening to your own intuition. Saturn is a very personal planet in the sense that not because it's one of the closer planets to us, but because it's very individualized with our own karma, with our own cycles. It's like somebody else's cycle in their life, that is very different from the cycle you're going through, or someone's karma is very different from your karma. And so it's very important to pay attention to the own responsibility in your life. It's like if you know something's not good for you, or if you're getting peer pressured to do something that you don't think is right and you're doing it anyway, that's when Saturn's going to really come in this month and say, hey, you can't do that anymore. There's going to be some serious consequences. You're going to fall if you go down that path again, so don't do it. But other people around you might not have that same voice in their head. They might not have that same understanding. They might not have that same feeling. They may not be at the point of the cycle that you're at. And so that's why it's really important to be able to feel confident in your independence. And Jupiter in Aries is all about independence. So this may mean that for a lot of you, you're going onto a new path and you don't have someone walking with you. You don't have someone holding your hand. There's not a tour guide. You're the guide. You're the one that has to go through it alone. And the beauty of this is that when you get to do something like that, when you get to take a chance on yourself, when you trust your intuition, the more that you step forward on that path, the stronger your intuition becomes. Because when you only have your own senses and your own intuition to rely on, you then become very good at doing that. Take that from my own life experience. It's true. Every time I've done something on my own and even went against what people said I couldn't do, that was when I felt the best. That was when I knew that I could achieve something. And the beauty of doing something on your own is that no one else takes credit for that. No one else can take credit for that. And it's not about credit. It's not about, it's all me or it's no one, but it's understanding that at the end of the day, you're the one that's closing your eyes and having your own dreams. You're the one that's waking up in your own body. No one else is doing that for you. You can sleep next to someone, you can talk to someone, you can hear someone else's thoughts when they share them with you, but no one else is going to understand and feel the things that are going on in your body, in your mind, in your heart. And so this month is about realizing that if you have to do something alone, if you have to be independent, you will make it. You will make it down that path. But it does require listening to the higher guidance, listening to your intuition, listening to your body. And this is a great test to kind of allow yourself to step into right now too, because For a lot of people, one of the big themes going on this year, because we started this year with the Venus retrograde, is changes in friendships, changes in relationships, changes in community dynamics. Saturn's been in Aquarius since 2021, and there's a sense of Saturn in Aquarius dealing with community. And it's like, where do I fit in? It's like you're at like the classic high school movie thing where you get into the lunchroom and you're like, I don't know where to sit. There's the cool kids, there's the jocks, there's the nerds, you know, that whole thing. There's a sense of that playing out in a very large way right now societally, where it's like you either are on this side or you're on this side. So what side are you going to choose? And yes, there may be some very real and literal having to choose sides right now. But the most important thing with Saturn in Aquarius is that there's an independent responsibility. It's like if enough people peer pressure you to do something, yeah, you can blame them. You can say that, oh, well, I only did it because they told me to. But at the end of the day, it was your decision. It was you. You were the one who said, well, I'll do it. I'll do it. Even if I don't want to, I'll do it. And that's where this month, because Saturn's retrograde, it's just not going to let you get away with things that you know aren't good for you, that you know you should not repeat. It's like if you have a habit or an attachment, a dependency, an addiction, and if you're dealing with something like that, trust me, you are not alone. I cannot tell you how many people I know, you know, clients otherwise in the world, things I hear, things I see, that are dealing with some very intense dependencies and addictions and attachments right now. So you're not alone if you're dealing with something like that. But at some point, you have to realize that you will be okay if you let it go. It will be okay if you are not dependent on that thing anymore. But you have to be the one to make that decision. Nobody else can do it for you. No one else is going to wake up in your body. No one else is going to have the dreams that you're having. And so overall, June is really about facing forward, focusing forward, and looking ahead. It's about seeing the paths that are available to you, because sometimes those paths are only there for a moment. It's not to say you're going to miss your opportunity or miss your shot, but Jupiter in Aries this year into next year, this is a really big moment, and it's not going to come back around for another 10 or so years. And whenever we have a whenever we have a planet in the first sign of the Zodiac, it's about radical new beginnings. It's about having the momentum to actually jump, take the leap, do something crazy, do something you've never done. But again, when you're doing something you've never done, the people who expect you to do what you've always done are probably not going to feel comfortable with it, especially if they're not pushing themselves to take a new start, to try something new too. Now, you can invite people to go on this journey with you, and a lot of people are going to have that companionship. A lot of people are going to realize that you're meeting the people who are also taking chances in their life. You're attracting people who support you in doing whatever your heart is calling you to do. But because, again, we're coming out of this eclipse season, and because we're coming out of this retrograde, for a lot of people over the past couple months, and really, again, since the beginning of this year with those retrogrades, you're probably dealing with things from the past, people from the past, expectations and stories that you have had on you or projected on you, or that you've been telling yourself for a very long time. Well, again, I'm here to tell you that June is like the first month of this year that you finally get to rewrite your story. You get to take the pen in your hand and make a new chapter, make a new title, erase what was and write something new. And the most important factor in being able to do that is having confidence in yourself, having courage in yourself to do something different, to just try it. But Jupiter in Aries gives us a lot of chances. It's like if you do something first and you fall down, like let's say you go down a new path and you get lost, you don't know what to do. Well, yeah, you could turn around and go all the way back, but you're already on this new path. So the real invitation is to keep going, to try again. You might fall down, but you can get back up again. And if you get back up again, you're going to be stronger, you're going to be steadier, you're going to be more stable, because you're learning as you're going. But if you never take that chance to learn, if you never take that chance to try, then you're always going to be stuck in the fear of that being bigger than you are. But once you master the path, once you go down it once and you see what it is, that's when you have become bigger than your fears. You've become bigger than the doubts. And so lots of motivation for you guys this month, but for real, you might need it because Jupiter in Aries and Mars in Aries, there's a sense of having to do something you've never done, having to do something different. And again, for a lot of people, it might be forced circumstances like a relationship ending, a job ending, a loss, or something that you didn't expect. You weren't planning on this. You were in your routine. You had everything going. And now you're faced with a new reality. And if you're in a new reality, you're going to have to be different or new within that reality. You're going to have to allow yourself to evolve and adapt to new circumstances. But again, I'm here to tell you that by Cancer season, at the end of this month, there's going to be a fresh flow that is here to guide us through the summer. And that's why I invite you to get into a good flow right now, to get into a flow that feels authentic, that you can feel your body saying yes to. Okay? So before we get into these horoscopes, I want to just talk about the lunar cycles a bit. So again, we started with that new moon in Gemini, and that is building up to the full moon in Sagittarius on June 14th. Now, this full moon is going to be ruled by Jupiter because Jupiter rules Sagittarius. And so we have fire and fire coming together. So we have Sagittarius and Aries here activated in the middle of the month. And it's still going to be in Gemini season, and air and fire complement each other. And so there's going to be a lot of things that start really coming together. Sagittarius is about seeing ahead and taking your shot, bow and arrow, aiming at your target and just going for it. And so that's why if you're still kind of figuring out what you're going to do next, what's going to be in the future for you, or maybe you've started a new chapter already, you're in a new place, you're doing something new, things are feeling good, by the middle of the month, there's going to be more clarity as to what this big picture looks like. It's kind of like if you take a film image or a Polaroid, you have to wait for the photo to appear. If you try and, do something crazy to see the photo as soon as you take it, you could actually mess that image up, and you might not get the beautiful image that was only a once in a moment chance. And so there's a sense of having patience to see the full image. There's a sense of waiting for the image to be shown to you. But by that full moon in Sagittarius, you're going to see the picture. You're going to see the full image. And so if you can take time right now up until the middle of the month to look at all the pieces in your life and clear out what you know doesn't belong in that picture anymore. So this is where we get back to that Saturn retrograde energy of understanding what you don't need to repeat, understanding what's in your past versus what's in your future, and learning how to take those pieces and place them accordingly in your present. And so it's like if you have a puzzle and you're trying to figure out this puzzle, you're trying to put it all together. Well, if you're taking pieces from another puzzle and you throw them onto all these other pieces, that's going to be a mess. But sometimes you have to take the time to clear up that mess before you can finish the puzzle. And so speaking in a lot of metaphors today, but this is going to kind of give some context to understanding that if you're dealing with pieces in your life right now, puzzle pieces in your life that feel like they don't fit, it's like, I can't figure out what to do about this. I don't know. There's no answer. Well, maybe that puzzle piece isn't meant for this puzzle. Maybe that's meant for the other puzzle. And so you got to take those pieces and put them where they belong, leave them in the past, or just simply remove them right now until you finish what you can, until you organize what you can. It's like focus on what you can actually do right now. Focus on what you can actually organize. Clear out what you know doesn't belong so that you have much more space to see what can fit. And by the time that we get to that full moon in Gemini, or the full moon in Sagittarius in the middle of the month, this is when you might notice that that puzzle piece that you were focused on, maybe it does belong in your picture. Maybe it does belong to that puzzle. But because you were focused on it and the rest of the puzzle was still all over the place, you couldn't see where it fit. But now that you cleared it out and you put it to the side and you focused on what you could see, what you could organize, what you did know, now you can take that puzzle piece and have it fit perfectly to finish the picture, to complete the picture. Maybe there's something in your life you're like, I know that this is meant for me. I know I'm supposed to do this, or I know I need to do this, but I don't know how. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how to get there. The beginning of this month up until the middle of the month, it's asking you to focus on the right order of things. It's like if you're trying to get to level 10, but you haven't completed level 1, you're just going to be stuck in a stressed, frustrated state because you haven't got there yet. You have to finish all of the levels first. You have to take the steps in order. And this is where if you can learn how to not worry or focus on the things that don't make sense right now, you might find that there's a lot of pleasure and power and passion that's available in the things that do make sense. So again, it's like putting the things to the side that don't make sense right now and finishing what is in front of you, doing the things that you know you can do, like doing things that may not be exciting or, an extreme, but it's like day-to-day little things, but you know you can do it or you know you have to do it. It's like if you're trying to figure out a big decision to make, but you haven't done your laundry or you haven't done your dishes. It's like sometimes you just need to put that to the side and finish the stuff you need to do. And maybe when you're doing the dishes, you're going to have an idea that you've been trying to figure out for months because you finally let yourself take a step away. And that's kind of the theme up until that full moon in Sagittarius is don't focus on the things that don't make sense yet, because it might be the missing piece of the puzzle, but you got to first finish the rest of the puzzle and then it's going to make sense. And one of the things I wanted to share with this too is I've been seeing a lot of, I always see a lot of different angel numbers. I'm sure a lot of you guys do too. And we'll save that whole understanding angel numbers maybe for another video or another day. But one of the things I've been seeing a lot recently is like 1, 2, 3, but not just 1, 2, 3, but also 2, 3, 1 and 3, 2, 1. And so my friend actually pointed this out that I'm just seeing 1, 2, 3 out of order. And it took me a minute to actually understand that that is the whole lesson of these numbers for me, is that you cannot go 2, 3, 1, because if you go to the second step and then third step, but you didn't finish the first step, then you got to go back to number 1 and then you got to start all over. And you can't go 3, 2, 1 because then you're starting at the end and you're getting back to the beginning, right? You're going backwards. So there's a sense of realizing that like some things have to be done in order. Sometimes it has to be 1, 2, 3. If you're only focused on the destination, if you're only focused on the 3, that's when you might want to just get there quickly. It's like going down the path you've been before because you're like, well, let's just go down this path because I've been there. I know how to get there. We got to get to that destination. We got to go right now. But the key is realizing that it's about the first step. It's about the second step. It's about taking the journey. It's about going down the path. Maybe the destination you thought you wanted isn't even what it really is. It's like seeing something in a store window and liking it is different than wearing it. Having an understanding of something is different than doing something and experiencing it. And so take the steps in order this month. Do the puzzle in order. Do something that makes sense, because the things that don't make sense are probably going to start coming together by the end of this month. And we close out this month with a new moon in Cancer on June 28th. And this is going to really switch up the energy because we're getting into the first water season of this year, of the astral new year. So Aries season, Taurus season, Gemini season, and Cancer season. So we're closing out the first 4 elements of the beginning of the Zodiac, meaning that by the time we get to Cancer season, which starts June 21st this year, this is when we're going to be getting into that flow state, that water state, but it has to do with everything we've experienced up until now. And that's why the beginning of this month is very important for realizing what you want to flow into, what it is that you're building, what it is that you're working on. Again, not putting all of your focus on the destination, but realizing the importance of the flow, the structure. It's like good systems, they work together. If something is working, it's because every little piece in that machine is working. If one little piece is off, if one little piece is missing, the whole machine doesn't work. And so getting to a flow state by the end of the month will require having patience to remove the things that are causing disruption and to invite things that are more simple, to invite things that make sense, to do things that cause that presence in the moment. Because by the end of this month, the new moon in Cancer is going to be a new emotional beginning for a lot of people. It's like if you have felt stuck in emotions, again, in May, a lot of people might have felt stuck in fear, anxiety, panic, paranoia. There's a lot of that in the world right now. Well, by the time we get to the end of this month, the new moon in Cancer is about letting yourself step into a new emotional beginning. You don't have to take the fear with you. You don't have to take the panic with you. You're allowed to be in a new emotional state. But again, it might first require that you focus on the little things, clear out those distractions, and have faith that you can move forward onto a new path. So enjoy this month, everyone. I think you're gonna really find that by July, things are gonna feel a lot different, especially for water signs, but that's not just for water signs, it's really for everyone. Again, a lot of different things going on. Every element is really activated this month with Jupiter, Mars, and Aries, Venus and Taurus, Saturn and Gemini season activating the air, and then the end of the month bringing it together with the water in Cancer. So things are going to come together. Have that faith and focus forward. Okay, so now let's get into these horoscopes. As always, these are going to be most applicable to your rising sign, which means that if you are watching this for your rising sign, it will be most relevant to your personal natal chart. But this can also apply to your personal placements and especially your chart ruler. So your sun, moon, Venus, Mars, Mercury, all of those can apply as well, but they may just apply more specifically to your own situation. So take what resonates and leave what doesn't. Okay, Aries placements. This is going to be a really big month for you guys because, again, this is our first month of this year with Jupiter in Aries without Mercury retrograde. And so Jupiter's in your sign and it has not been here since about 2011. And so this is going to be a really exciting time to take a risk and try something new. In fact, I don't think I even have to tell you guys that because chances are you're already in a new situation or you've already started something brand new, or there's a lot of options in your life right now for things that you have not had available before. And this is not something, again, that you have to jump on right away because Jupiter will be here for most of this year and again next year. But there is a real emphasis on taking action on certain things right now and trying something new because Mars is in your sign. And the last time Mars was here, we had Mars retrograde. And so there's a sense of having momentum in your life right now to move forward. But one of the things that you guys might really deal with this month is having to let go of those old stories or having to let go of some friendships that you've outgrown. And this is especially true, again, for Aries risings. Saturn retrograde is in the 11th house to Aries, which means that this deals with community and friendship and the future. And so for a lot of Aries placements, this month is going to have to do with identifying the communities that you belong in, the communities that you want to be in, the communities that are supporting you, and realizing how some friendships and associations, you may have outgrown those. There may not be enough space for you in them anymore. And this is why this month invites you to find new ways to communicate and express and understand things. But it may feel a little bit internal, or it may force you to put yourself out there in a new way with people that can feel a little bit uncomfortable, and you might get a little bit of pushback. But I'm here to tell you that there is a new beginning here for you, no matter which route you take. But it will be an invitation to try new things or put yourself into new situations. And so because you have the new moon in Gemini that happened in your third house on May 30th, this is building up to the full moon in Sagittarius that will happen in your 9th house. And then at the end of the month, the new moon in Cancer is going to happen in your 4th house of emotions. And so what this looks like overall is that a lot of you might be moving, you might be making a big transition in life, you might be starting a new chapter in school or education or a career. But again, this may mean that you have to communicate with people and be very clear about your needs and your wants right now. You might have to set very clear boundaries with people and tell people that you don't have enough time to do what you did before. If you've been used to doing something again and again in the same way, this month is going to put you outside of your comfort zone. And you may have to clearly communicate with people to say, I'm not available for that. I can't do that. I don't think that way anymore. I don't see the same things that I used to see. I'm in a new place. I'm doing something new. I'm trying something new. And that's where there might be a little bit of confusion kind of going into this month of if you're doing the right thing, if you're taking the right path, if you can even do this alone. You might feel like, how can I move forward without that person? How can I do this without them? They were always there for me. Well, this month is going to show you that there's a lot more people that are going to be showing up for you. There's a lot more people on the horizon. There's a lot more opportunities on the horizon. But again, it does require, or it asks you to be comfortable with stepping away, to be comfortable with saying, I don't have space for that in my life anymore. Because with Jupiter in your sign, you are taking up more space. You are meant to have more space. For a lot of you, this is about like real, literal expansion in your life, getting into a bigger house, a bigger home, a bigger role in something, taking on more responsibility with something, leveling up essentially. But again, when you do that, this may mean that you have less time to do what you were doing before, or that you just simply don't have any interest in some of the activities that you were doing before. And so this is where, because the new moon happened in your third house, and because Mercury retrograde started in your third house, then went back to your second house, and by June 13th, it will go back into your third house. And then for the rest of this month, it's going to be making its way to your fourth house, where you have the new moon at the end of the month. There's a sense of really clearing out the logistics of your life, or getting clear on the logistics of your life. So communication right now may be a bit tricky, meaning you might have some conversations, or you may have already had some conversations in May going into June that were not very comfortable. Maybe you got into a fight with someone, maybe there was a conflict, maybe someone's just not seeing your perspective on something. Well, as Mercury is creeping back into Gemini this month, but it's still in Taurus for the beginning of the month, there's a sense of really understanding how the things in your life that you're taking ownership and responsibility for are very important, because nobody else is going to have that same role that you do. Meaning, if someone is telling you like, hey, you don't need to go do that, you can save that work for tomorrow, like, you don't need to work on that, it's going to be fine. But if you know that if you don't get something done, or if you don't take accountability for something, that it's going to hurt you later on, well, this month asks you to really identify your autonomy autonomy and be very clear about your wants, your needs, and your boundaries to maintain those. Because for a lot of Aries placements, the peer pressure this month is going to be real, because Saturn retrograde in your 11th, again, it's just like certain friendships and cycles that you're used to, they may not feel very good the same way that they used to feel good. It's like if you always got used to doing something with a certain person, you might go do that with them this month and you might be like, gosh, I really should have stayed home and finished my work. Or like, wow, this actually is not making me feel good at all. And that's where listening to your gut feeling, listening to your instincts will be very important this month, but it may require that you have to just do something anyway, even if people don't understand you. You may have to say, look, I can't persuade you, I can't convince you, so I just need you to listen to me and understand that I need to do this for myself. And what may be difficult is realizing that some people may not be there for you in that way. Some people may not want to support you in doing something that you've never done. And that can be emotional. That can make you feel like you have to look back at your past and process something, or process a friendship, or process a relationship, or a family connection, or your history, and try to make sense of what got you to where you are today. Because with Cancer season starting in your 4th house later this month, and then the new moon that's going to happen in your 4th house later this month, this is going to be an emotional and nostalgic time. But again, it's not meant to bring you backwards, but rather to propel you forward in a new way. It may ask you to look at how something in your life that you were holding on to actually was not that fulfilling. Maybe someone new comes into your life, a new coworker, a neighbor, a friend, and you realize that this is a much healthier dynamic and you want more of that in your life. But that contrast to what has been in your life may be a little bit unsettling. It may have to show you that some of the situations you were in the past that you had been settling for were not fulfilling, and that you don't need those anymore. It's kind of realizing that like you are worth everything that you need and desire. Like, you do not have to put up with something just because you've been putting up with it for years. You do not have to continue in a relationship, a friendship, or a co-working situation just because you got used to that dynamic. Just because people expect you to show up how you always have shown up, that's not their responsibility. That is your responsibility to show up differently. And this is the month that you really are going to have that momentum to cut things out that don't fit into your life anymore, to rewrite rewrite your story. And for a lot of Aries placements, by the time that we get into the summer, Jupiter is really going to be moving full force through your sign, and it already is right now, but it's still kind of fresh there. And so for a lot of Aries placements, you might still feel like you're in this new place, this new beginning, this new chapter, and you're just like, you feel like naked or something. You're like, I don't want to be seen like this. You're like, I would rather hang out with the people who they already know me. It's like, I don't want to go have to meet new people. But this month and going into the summer is going to show you that putting yourself out there is going to bring you so many rewards. Jupiter rewards people. Jupiter brings you options, opportunities, and this is the month that Jupiter is going to really start showing you what's available. And so the only thing that you have to do this month is have the courage, have the confidence to take that step and to try something new. But again, overall, it may require that you do have to set some boundaries, have clear communication, or just make peace with yourself on emotional things that have happened in your life and influence the way that you think or see things. And just because you settled for an emotional reality your whole life, like you got comfortable being anxious, or you got comfortable being picked last, or you got comfortable being ridiculed, that's okay. You know, the Cancer emphasis later this month is going to help you to process some of those past events and emotions. It's going to kind of say like, hey, that happened for a reason. You know, have the closure that you need, do a ritual if you need to, do something that helps you to see that you are out of that place, you're out of that phase, and you don't have to put up with it anymore if it was something that was difficult for you. And for some people, you know, you may actually feel like something good has ended. You may feel like a good relationship has ended. Something that you were holding on to is now not available to you, and that can make you fear any incoming emotions of sadness, of grief. But the overall theme for Aries is getting comfortable in this new beginning because there's so many good things on the horizons for you guys. And so if you can just allow yourself to feel and process any emotions that are coming up, and to realize that even though it may feel comfortable to go back and be with a certain person or be in a certain place or put yourself in the same position you were in before, that comfort is going to quickly dwindle. And you may find that if you do find yourself going backwards, you may realize that it's actually not that comfortable. It's actually not as good as you remembered it. And so this month is showing you that the horizon is much more clear, and focusing on that is going to lead you to a lot more rewards in the future. All right, Aries, have a great month. Okay, Taurus placements. Happy June, and it's not your season anymore, but congratulations on making it through eclipse season. Now, for a lot of Taurus placements, you may actually feel like May was amazing. You may feel like May was like one of the best months ever. And that's because, lucky for you guys, the North Node is in your sign. So we had a new moon solar eclipse in Taurus at the end of April going into May. And that was really all about showing Taurus placements that you are worth it. You are in the spotlight and you can be happy. And in June, this is about realizing that it's okay to settle into this newfound confidence. It's okay to settle into your own skin, to feel aligned in who you are or where you are, because the more that you align yourself with where you are or where you're going, the more confident you're going to really feel about being in the spotlight. Because again, for Taurus placements from now until 2023, it is all about you. So don't turn away the cameras. Don't say, no photography, because people want to see you. People want you to know that they care and that you're valuable and that you're worth it. Now, maybe you don't feel like that just yet, and that's okay. This month is going to show you that there is a new opportunity for responsibility in your life. This could be a new job, a new role in a job. This could be in your home life, family life, and your relationships. There's commitments that are being tested this month. And it's not to say that you have to maintain the commitments in your life, but rather that it's asking you to identify what those commitments are. This is because Saturn retrograde is happening at the top of your charts, again, especially mainly for Taurus risings here. But for all Taurus placements, Saturn retrograde is happening square to Taurus. And so this is really going to be hitting you guys pretty hard. And Saturn is about responsibility. And because it's happening in your 10th house, again, Taurus risings specifically, but it applies. This is about career. This is about the things that you put yourself out there for, the things that you are obligated to do. do, the commitments that you have made. A lot of you might be finishing out a major cycle in your life. Maybe you've worked somewhere for a very long time. Maybe you're finishing education and you're graduating. And even if you're not literally graduating, you might just be graduating on to something new. Maybe you want to take a totally different turn and go down a new career path, or maybe you want to try to get into a relationship that is not like the relationship you thought you'd want to be in. And this is a lot of what you might have noticed or realized in May. A lot of Taurus placements are going to be understanding that you might have been viewing yourself in a lesser version of who you really are. And for what reason, maybe you got out of a bad breakup at one point, maybe something or someone really hurt your self-worth or your confidence at some point of your life. But this is the time with the North Node in your sign, now through next year, it's here to show you that like you are so worthy. You are so amazing. Whatever it is that you offer to the world, it's worthy and people need it. It's valuable. And for a lot of Taurus placements, this is going to be about realizing your hidden talents, showing people that you actually are multifaceted. You're not just one thing, but you're all the things. And it's getting comfortable in this new skin. Now, because the new moon in Gemini happened in your second house this month or at the end of May, and the full moon in Sagittarius is going to happen in your 8th house, this is really about the ownership and the commitments that you make and realizing what is worth it and what's not, what's going to actually pay off and what's not going to pay off. Looking at it from a bigger picture, it does look like a lot of you are just going through job changes, location changes. You may have ended a relationship or you're in the process of transitioning in a relationship, which might require just moving around some assets, liabilities, documents, finances, having to kind of like get things clear so that you are set up properly for something new. Maybe you are getting out of a contract and you're kind of transitioning into a time where you're going to start a new contract in something, but maybe you don't know exactly what it is yet, and that's okay. This month is here to show you that it's safe to move forward, that it's safe to take up this new role or this new responsibility, or to show people what you really want or who you really are. Now, Jupiter in Aries and Mars in Aries is in your 12th house, and this is really true for all Taurus placements because it's 12th to Taurus, and anything that's 12th to us, it's blinded to us, or we're blinded by it, which means that you can't really see what's going on there. It's more subconscious. So these are the things that you might notice in a dream or in a vision, or you do psychedelics or something and you get some clarity, or you listen to music and you hear something that you needed to hear. But it's not going to be as obvious. And because we have Jupiter here, which is about growth and is very obvious, there may be some subconscious cues that are very important to listen to this month, specifically for dreams. Any dreams that you're having this month are really important to listen to. Now, because Mars is going to be here too, there can just be some like excessive aggression or even just things that can seem very like intense. There may be things that make it very hard for you to get sleep. Maybe you're having some trouble sleeping. If that's the case, wait for July. Things will get a little bit better with your sleeping. Maybe you're staying up thinking about a problem. You're like, I don't know what I'm going to do about this. I don't know what's going to come next. Don't worry. This is a momentary blip in the equation of figuring out what's next. But with Saturn retrograde, it's asking you to really, really take your desires and your needs seriously. It's asking you to also really look ahead and plan ahead. Mercury retrograde happened in your second house, and then it went back into your first house. So it happened ahead of your sign, and then it moved back into your sign, and it went direct on June 3rd. It's going direct on June 3rd in your sign, and it will be here for most of this month. And so for a lot of Taurus placements, you're going to really be getting clear on something this month, but again, it may be a little unexpected, or it may be something that you didn't think you'd actually want. Like, let's say that you had totally dismissed the idea of taking a certain job or moving somewhere or trying something. You're like, oh, that's not realistic. I could never do that. I couldn't do this, But last month into this month, May into June, is here to show you that actually it's totally possible. And the only thing that you might need to move out of the way now is that doubt, is that fear. And sometimes it's not even doubt or fear, but it's just a transition. It's like, you cannot go from your freshman year of high school or college to your senior year. You know, you have to go step by step. You have got to elevate. So you might have different understandings about who you are, your skill sets, what you're capable of now than you did 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 2 years ago, because you simply have more experience to work with now. You simply have a better understanding of who you are and what you're capable of. This is a time to really look at the accomplishments in your life and be proud of what you've done. Be proud of how far that you have made it. Because for a lot of Taurus placements, again, you're in the spotlight right now. And if you don't feel that yet, you will be. And so this is getting comfortable in taking on this role of a leader, or taking on this role of someone who accomplishes great things. And this is not to put any pressure on Taurus placements if you don't feel like that's applying to you. You know, that's okay. There's a lot of things going on this month that are in hidden places of your chart, which means that some of the big changes in your life, again, might really still be under the surface or subconscious. The full moon in Sagittarius that's going to happen in your 8th house is about a major ending in your life. And it doesn't have to be super dramatic, doesn't have to be good or bad, but it's likely just going to be letting yourself grow up in, not like grow up, but like evolve your maturity of how you're seeing something, you know, realizing that like you're not in this place anymore, you're not this age anymore. You're allowed to take responsibility that you know you can do. It's like if someone's always told you that, oh, well, you're too young for that, you can't do that. Well, maybe you're not young anymore. Maybe you are fully aged and you feel like you can do anything now because you have that maturity. So there's just a sense of realizing that the reality around you, and that reality is probably actually a lot better than maybe you thought it was before. Maybe again, you started something and you were very like anxious or excited to start it because you've never done it before, but now you're at a point where you're probably mature in that experience. So you've done the job, you completed the job, you got accolades for it, you got accomplishments in that, and maybe now you're going to get promoted to a new job. But this is also where you might realize that you're very, very valuable to this company, or you're very, very valuable in this relationship, or you're very valuable to whatever circumstance it is. And this may be where in the past, maybe you didn't have as much experience, you didn't have a whole resume to be able to go get a job somewhere else. And so you really wanted to prove yourself to this person or to this job or to this boss. But now you've already proved yourself. You've already proved yourself. You don't have to prove yourself anymore. In fact, now you might be the one that's in charge. You might be the one that has to give other people a chance to prove themselves to you, because you're the one that is going to have a lot of the power this month and just, again, this year. So Taurus placements overall, you might still be figuring out some logistics about moving forward. You might be wondering if you should go forward on a new path, take a new job, try something you haven't done. And again, this is a big theme for everybody this month, but really for Taurus placements, I want to tell you that you are worth it. You have, like, if you don't feel like you're confident enough to do it, people around you might say otherwise. People around you might say, oh, well, he, she, they're the most confident person I know, or like they're the best person at this job. But you might still be stuck in an earlier version of yourself and think, oh, well, nah, I'm just like everyone else here. But this is the time to really take ownership for who you are and for how valuable you are, because there's going to be an opportunity on the horizon if it's not already in your life. And again, for a lot of people, you probably already started it, maybe in May, but it's here to show you that you have leveled up. You have made it to a new place, and not just the logistics of everything, like taking a new job or moving into a bigger house or something. That's the outside, external, tangible reality. But when we change our reality like that, when we move on to something, and sometimes it's also just, just moving forward in life. Like, it doesn't have to be a bigger, better thing. It can just be a different thing, a different house, a different job, a different location, different car. This is also going to come with changes in your perception, changes in how you see things, changes in how you see yourself. And so for a lot of Taurus placements, you might be thinking like, wow, I really just don't enjoy some things I used to enjoy, or like, I don't think I actually want that anymore. Like, I thought I always wanted this, or my parents always told me I should do this, but I don't really want to do that. You don't beat yourself up if that's the case, because that's actually your intuition, or, you know, your very obvious cues telling you that you've achieved that phase of your life, and it's over. You know, you made it through. Maybe you were set on getting this job for so long and you finally got it and you finally worked through it. And now you might be thinking, well, what am I going to do next? Because I had so much focus on this my whole life, so I don't know what to do now. And this month is here to show you that it's a natural ebb and flow of progress right now. So moving into a new position, a new location, a new car, job, again, this is the natural evolution of the mind and the body and the spirit. And so you might just start showing up different. You might start looking different. You might start presenting yourself differently. But this is not about not being yourself. You might think, oh, well, that's not me. I don't do that. Well, the past version of you maybe didn't do that. The past version of you maybe didn't see yourself so good. Maybe people around you are like, oh, you're more confident, or like you never used to say things like that. But that's the past version of you. Yeah, the past version of you maybe didn't do those things, but where you are now, who you are now, what you've accomplished now, well, this is a whole new version of yourself. It's not a different person. It's not that you're not yourself. It's just that you're showing a different or more evolved version of who you are. And because Venus is going to be in your sign this month, Venus is your ruler. Again, for Taurus risings, this is going to be really great. This is going to represent a new emotional comfort or support with this new version of yourself. And so you might find that you have a lot of friends who are very supportive of this change in your life. You might find that you have the resources really showing up for you. It's like if you are worried that you're not going to be able to make a transition in your life because you don't have X, Y, and Z, this month is going to bring those things into your life to make something happen. If you're waiting on money, it's probably going to start coming in this month, especially once Mercury moves into your second house in Gemini on June 13th. And in general, again, this month with Venus in your sign, you are meant to be seen and you are meant to be loved. So let people celebrate you. Let people be happy for you, because chances are a lot of Taurus placements have the support that you need right now. It's just about giving yourself that support to be a different version of yourself, or to show a different side of yourself to the world, and know that you will be supported in what you're doing. Okay, Taurus, have a great June. Okay, Geminis, happy season, happy birthdays, solar returns. Now, I'm not gonna lie, for Gemini specifically, you know, the new moon kicked off the month, or at the end of May, and it was in your sign, so a lot of you might be having some new beginnings in your life. But because of all of the context of the other transits, and again, especially for Gemini risings, this month might feel a little bit messy still. You might feel like you're having to balance or juggle a lot of different things, but you need time to not have to be obligated to those things. So you might be craving some time alone. Venus is in the 12th to Gemini this month in Taurus, which means that there's a sense of really craving some internal subconscious moments with yourself. But that doesn't always mean that that's available. And because Jupiter and Mars are going to be in your 11th house of friendships, social activities, community, a lot of you guys might be going to do a lot of different things, but there's an emphasis on really taking some time to slow things down where you can and get a little bit of perspective, because with Saturn retrograde this month, it's going to be happening in Aquarius, and Aquarius connects to Gemini in a very positive way through a trine, because they're both air signs. And for Gemini risings, and just again in general, this is happening in the 9th house to Gemini. The 9th house is about travel, education, and spirituality. And it can have to do with taking a new path. It can have to do with spiritual awakenings. Now, if you've ever gone through a spiritual awakening, and I know this kind of is like a buzzword now, but from someone who went through a very intense spiritual awakening when I was 17, and again, recently, let me tell you right now, they're not very fun. It's not very fun. It gets to be fun. It gets to be very enjoyable once you kind of realize the purpose of it all. But at the beginning, it can feel like you're just blindsided. You're just punched in the gut or punched in the face from the universe. You know, it can feel like the universe is kind of disciplining you and saying, like you can't do that, or you need to see this a different way, or we're going to take this away if you don't figure that out. And because Saturn is all about that too, there really is a sense that Geminis need to pay attention to the cues in your life this month that are showing you the direction you need to go in. Because there's a lot of activity for Geminis right now, there again may be a natural feeling to just say yes to everything, or to just go with the flow and not really think too much about yes or no, or if you're supposed to do something, or maybe you just aren't really putting yourself first. Maybe you're used to saying, oh, well, they invited me to do this, so I'm gonna go do that. Or I don't wanna say no, I don't wanna hurt their feelings, I don't wanna turn them down, I don't wanna make them question me, I don't wanna have to explain myself, so I'm just gonna go ahead with it. But Geminis, this is your month to actually get comfortable with being alone. And for some of you, you might be like, nope, I'm gonna leave, I'm not gonna do that. But because Saturn kind of forces us to be in contexts that we might otherwise run away from, and because Saturn retrograde is happening and it's going to be aspecting Gemini, there's a sense of being rewarded for the internal progress that you make right now. It's like, it's easy to put all of your accomplishments out into the world. It's like, you know, making a Facebook post or an Instagram post and being like, I just did this, I just did that, you know, and being so happy about that. And it's great to share those things. But there's also a sense of learning how to celebrate things in private, how to celebrate the little wins, the things that other people can't see, the things that are intangible. And Geminis, this is going to be a month when you're asked to learn how to celebrate your own success that is not always evident, the stuff that is not always obvious. And some of you might be trying to force some accomplishment in areas that are tangible because you're used to that. So like going to a party, or putting something out online, or buying something, or moving into a new place or something. Those are those kind of again, circumstances or evidential achievements. But this month might take those things away from you to show you that the real beauty of achievement, accomplishment, and development happens internally. It happens with the things that people cannot see. And because Venus again is in the 12th to Gemini, and because Gemini placements, that eclipse season that happened for you guys, well, for everyone, in May really activated your 12th and your 6th house, which again is a place in the chart that is not very obvious, and it's actually very private. This is the month where if you've been ignoring something in your life, like if you know that you keep doing something and it's not healthy for you, it's like if you're, this is a very common example, so that's why I'm using this. It's like if you're drinking all the time, if you're going out and drinking every weekend, but you are feeling really bad, like your body is not feeling good, like you know that you need to do something different for your health, this is the month that there's not going to be, you can't go down that road again. You can't continue to do that because it's not going to end well. And the external validation that you might be seeking might be taken away from you if you don't listen to the internal cues that are asking you to validate yourself. And that internal validation will be very important this month. And I'm going to tell you right now that if you can let yourself take a chance on being alone, trying something and achieving it without having to share it with anyone, I think you're going to go into July feeling like yourself. And I say that because for a lot of Gemini placements, my guess is that right now you might not feel like yourself. You might feel, and maybe you do, you know, going to be different for everyone, right? But maybe you feel like you're in a new position, a new relationship, or something is in your life that has just been a little different for you. And you're not quite sure where things went off. Maybe you're still adjusting to a new circumstance or something. This month is going to really settle things for you in an internal way, but it again may show you things that you don't really want to admit or you don't want to see. Let's say that you've been dating someone and it's been going great, you've been having a great time, it's all been fun and well, but maybe now you're getting to the point where it's going to be a relationship. And this is where dating and relationships are very different. The 5th house is dating, 7th house is relationships, 6th house is in between that all. And 6th house again is where you have the activation with not Sagittarius, but with Scorpio. And so the full lunar eclipse that happened on May 16th, May 15th and 16th, that was in your 6th house. And so for a lot of Gemini placements, you might be noticing that like things can be really fun in certain circumstances or contexts, but they're not as fun in other circumstances or contexts. So like going out and partying with friends might be really fun on the weekend, but if you start doing that every night, that's probably not going to be very fun. It's like going to a bar that's very busy and active and social is fun for Geminis. But then you might go and do that on a Tuesday and no one's there and you're like, oh, we're really all just here avoiding our responsibilities. And I'm very direct, so if I'm calling you out on anything specific, I don't mean to, or do I? No, but there's a sense of just getting comfortable with the little things that are not seen. And that might mean going to bed early, putting down the phone, telling someone no, breaking something off, saying you can't do something because you need to take care of your health, or like not going out because you just don't feel good. It's like if you're sick and you need to go take a nap or get some sleep and there's a social event and you're feeling social pressure, this is the month where you're going to realize that social pressure does not outweigh internal health obligations. Like if you're not healthy, then you cannot show up anywhere. You cannot have a good time anywhere. So there's no point in forcing yourself to go do something if you haven't taken care of your internal needs. It's like if your house is a mess, if your job is a mess, but you're prioritizing all of your social activities because you think that this is what's going to bring you happiness, this month is going to show you that it's about balance. It's about taking care of yourself and taking care of your social life, letting yourself get your work done and go have a good time and get home early and go to bed, you know? There's a balance that's needed. And some things this month for Geminis just might not feel very glamorous. You might have some letdowns that could be coming out of the end of May into this month, and maybe it's not even a letdown, but maybe it's that extreme, right? It's like, let's say that you had a really amazing month. You had a great time. You went and got to do all these things. You got to be in so many amazing circumstances. Well, there's a level where we just have to be grateful for those events without having to always repeat them. And that's what this month might show you, is that you have to learn how to be comfortable in the silence. You have to learn how to be okay when nothing's going on, when you do just have to take care of your obligations, when your life is just about going to work, going to sleep, and eating. Like, yeah, it's not glamorous, it's not always fun, but it can be very rewarding. And in fact, if you let yourself step into that right now, chances are that you are going to be so grateful for any new routines or habits you develop, because those are going to be what free you to be able to show up more or show up better or show up more as yourself or healthier in your social environments and in your commitments, in your relationships. And so there's a sense this month, Geminis, of honestly just being real with it, just being true about, or being honest about what's going on in your life. If you've been hiding something under the surface for a long time, it can feel like that's just what you always have to do. Like, let's say you've been struggling with something and you haven't really told anyone about it. This month it's going to come to the surface if it hadn't already come to the surface last month. And this might be the month where you have to communicate that with people. You have to say, like, honestly, I'm not going through the best time. I think I would rather have a night in and just talk about life, or that's what I like doing. No, I like it all. But it's like having that context is really important in relationships. If you're trying to show up for everybody else, but you're not showing up for yourself, that's when you might realize that other people can't show up for you either. Because having the ability to show up for yourself is showing other people how to show up for you too. Taking care of yourself allows other people to know what you need. And that's when relationships really become substantial. That's when commitments can really last, because we have to know the ins and outs of our daily life. It's not just about what is seen on social media. It's not just about what people want to hear or want to see. And, you know, air sign culture can be, I have a lot of air placements, no judgment. But air sign culture can be very much about people pleasing. It can be like, I'll tell you exactly what you want to hear, or I'll be exactly who you want me to be. But at the end of the day, again, it's just you. And maybe the person that you were trying to impress isn't someone who even impressed you. And that's what is going to really be calling to Gemini placements this month, is to take a step back, go internally, and understand the things that are needed to fulfill your daily life, even if it's not glamorous, even if it's not rewarded. needed. Even if people even go against it, maybe people are saying, oh, you're not going to come out, oh, you're not going to go do this, oh, you're not going to do this task at work, well, why can't you do this? What's the deal? This is where you might have to really emphasize your ability to communicate clearly and confidently, and this might require that you're a bit more vulnerable than you are used to. Maybe you had been in a place where you were really feeling yourself, you were kind of feeling everything and you didn't have any issues and you were speaking a certain way and acting a certain way, but now maybe you're not feeling so confident, and this can be like, well, I don't want to tell people what's going on because then they're going to think that I, am not this way, or they're going to think that I have all these issues. But the real people in your life do not care. The real people in your life want to help you. And so overall, Gemini placements, there's probably just going to be a lot of daily things in your life that need attention this month, little details that need to be organized. But I have good news for your commitments and for your relationships, and that is that Mercury retrograde ended in Taurus in your 12th, but it's going to be, again, moving into your sign on June 13th. And for Gemini risings, this will be especially important, but for all Gemini placements, you're going to get some clarity on why things haven't been working in your life. So if something has been jumbled or chaotic, things are going to start making more sense. Or maybe you feel like you haven't been able to express yourself clearly. Maybe you're waiting for a creative kick. You feel like you're in a rut. Things are going to start flowing to you, but you have to clear that space. And that's what, now until June 13th, and whenever you're watching this is fine, but if you're seeing this before June 13th, this is a great time to get things organized, get things clear. Again, it's like, if you need to go do your laundry, do your dishes, clean your house, do it. Take care of it, because I promise you there's nothing else that's more important that is just fleeting, like a social event or activity. That is not more important than taking care of yourself. And if you can take care of yourself and say no to things, by the time that we get towards the end of the month, there's going to start being more rewarding things coming in for you. There's going to start being things that are really paying off for you. And that's because we'll enter Cancer season, which will highlight your second house of ownership and responsibility. And it can also deal with commitment. And more so, we have the full moon in Sagittarius that will happen in your 7th house of relationships on June 14th. So now, if you have not taken the time to take care of yourself, to get clear on what you need to do, or to communicate clearly with people, then this full moon can be a bit messy. This might be where that's like a slap in the face. It's like, hey, you didn't take care of this. Well, now it's a big old mess, and now you have to put everything off to take care of this. That's okay. Life happens like that sometimes very often. But if you do kind of let yourself really step back and go slower and set some boundaries and reclaim your power this month, by the time we get to that full moon and going into the end of this month into Cancer season, my guess is that a lot of Gemini placements are going to be feeling very proud of themselves because you took the time to do what you need to do, and now you get to show up how you want to. Now you get to commit to something. Now you get to go and spend time with friends. Now you get to say yes to something. Now you get to make plans that you wanted to do. But it does require realizing that you don't always have to be on. You don't always have to be social. You don't always have to be seen. Sometimes there's much more reward, there's much more gratitude, there's much more grace in just being present with yourself. And Geminis, I think if you can do that this month, you're going to be very happy that you took time to take care of yourself. Okay, Cancer placements, happy June. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you feel like life has just been so hard on you, hang in there, because your season is coming at the end of the month. Even if you're not a Cancer sun, this is going to be so refreshing for Cancer placements. There's a new moon in Cancer on June 28th, and this is going to really show you that new beginnings are here. You do not have to stay stuck in this place that you've been. You do not have to stay stuck in a place of grief or fear. Things are going to start moving forward for you. And for a lot of Cancer placements, you really may have felt like things have been on hold, or you haven't been clear on something, but there is a new start coming. Now, as we begin this month, coming out of Mercury retrograde, Mercury was retrograde first in your 12th house, and then it moved back to your 11th, and now it's going to move forward towards your 12th again, and eventually make it to your first house. So when we're looking at what this means for Cancer placements, this looks like a lot of you have probably been trying to make some kind of a big picture decision. You're looking ahead, you're looking at all the details, you're thinking internally, you're processing emotions, you're waiting for signs, you're listening to your dreams, but maybe you still feel like you're a little unclear on something. Well, as Mercury moves forward and gets out of this retrograde, things are going to really start making sense. You're going to see how if something didn't work out, it was for a reason. You know, rejection is protection. If something was on hold, it was for a reason. Divine timing is real. And I heard this once on a podcast, and I want to share it because I think this really applies to Cancer placements right now with everything going on this month. This was, gosh, I can't remember the podcast right now, but it was a story about this guy was driving and he was with his wife and they were in a rush to get somewhere, and there was this big truck in front of them, or no, there was a car in front of them that was going really, really slow, but they were at a place where they couldn't get around, and the guy was getting so mad and he was cussing and he's like, I just want to get around this truck, why can't I get around it? But there was no way to get around it, so they just had to wait. They just had to go slow, but he was so upset. Well, eventually, the truck moved on and they saw that there was a wreck that just happened. And the message of it was that if he had tried so hard to get out of the way and to change the timing and to rush ahead, even when there was a very obvious halt in front of him, he could have been the one that got in the wreck. He could have been the one that was, hit or sideswiped or whatever it was. But instead, that divine timing was actually the placement of someone in front of them moving slower. That was the car that was moving too slow. That was the protection. And so sometimes, hopefully that story makes sense, but sometimes it's like if you think that you're supposed to be somewhere sooner than you are, but you are being held up for some reason, that's not the universe working against you, that's the universe working for you. But you may not know why that is until later, until you see the wreck that you avoided, until you see why something was on hold. It's like maybe you're rushing to get into a new job or to get into a new place or a relationship. But if you're rushing to get there and the perfect job for you is not yet available, maybe it's not listed yet, maybe the house isn't on the market yet, maybe that person isn't single yet. If you're rushing to get to it, you're gonna just get into something that is not meant for you. You're gonna take the first option available because you're worried more about the timing than the divinity of it. And that's really what Cancer placements I think you can relate to, or what can be helpful for you this month, is understanding how to be comfortable with the slowness, how to be comfortable with the wait, how to understand that good things really do take time. But by the end of this month, I think you're going to start seeing how the wait is over. The wait is over. And now is the time to actually embrace this new chapter, but it may require holding on a little bit longer, being patient a little bit longer, because as Mercury goes direct and moves back into Gemini on June 13th, this is going to reactivate your 12th house. And so this is going to be a time when you might realize that something you thought you had finished actually wasn't done, it wasn't completed. You need to actually take a few more steps before you can get onto something new. And so this again can be that divine timing or the divine blessing of realizing how if you have had time to yourself, if you've been at a place of stasis or, feeling stuck, this is actually where you have the opportunity to take care of other things, to get ready for something. It's like if you're going to go on a big trip and you're just so focused on getting to the trip, like you're just so excited to go on it, you're like, I can't wait. Well, if you don't take the time to pack properly, by the time you're on the trip, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I had all that time before this trip to pack, but I was so nervous or I was so worried about the trip that I didn't pack properly. So there's a sense right now of getting comfortable in the wait, getting happy in the waiting room, realizing that it's like if you're in a waiting room, then eventually you're going to be called up. It's going to be your turn soon. If you're in a line, it's going to be your turn soon. But you don't want to rush to the beginning of the line because maybe you're not even going to get what you actually signed up for. Maybe you're not even going to get what was created specifically for you. And that's why Cancer placements this month asks you to close out a cycle very happily, with gratitude. It's like if you're trying to get out of a situation right now, or if you're just in a place where you're bored or you're stuck, or you're like, why isn't anything changing? You're like, I'm so tired of this. There's something new on the horizon. Cancer season is going to bring you those blessings. But right now, it's about being grateful for what's been. It's about realizing where you are. It's about being present in the moment, noticing the little things. It's like if you're focused too much on the future, you're going to miss what's right in front of you, but what you're looking for might be right in front of you. Like the invitation or the opportunity or the information that you're trying to look way out in the distance for might be right in front of you. But if you have not focused on the things around you, you're going to miss it. And so there's a sense of just being grateful for wherever you are, at whatever phase in your life you're at right now. There's a reason why things are not moving forward. And that is because you are meant to be still. You're meant to be still, to rest, to get ready. It's like if you have a big performance that you're going to do, you don't want to go and do a bunch of busy things that take up all your energy, because then when you have your performance, you're not going to be the full energized self that you can be, because you're going to be exhausted from making yourself busy previously. And so that might be a very real example for some Cancer placements, but in general, you know, every year in Gemini season, it's when Cancers are meant to rest, because it's preparing for your season. And so right now, if it feels like nothing's moving forward, do not force it. This was a big message that I shared in May. In general, it's just like, don't rush things, like slow down. But for Cancer placements, this is really still evident this month. Now that said, Saturn is retrograde in your 8th house, and the 8th house to Cancer. And this is also what is going to be slowing you down a bit so that you can understand the importance of processing things fully before moving on. It's like if you have been in a relationship and you're trying to get into a new one super quick, but you have not processed that past relationship, you're going to carry that baggage into this next relationship. That's just how it goes. It's like if you finish a job or a project and you're trying so quick to finish it and move on to the next thing, but you didn't actually finish it, then you're gonna have to come back around in the future and finish it up. And so this is the time for Cancer placements to be patient and to finish things out, close out cycles that are already in your life. The new cycle's coming, the new start is coming, but right now it's about closing things out still. And the full moon and the new moons that are activated this month, kicking off the month, we had the new moon in Gemini, which again is in your 12th house. So that was really showing you that you are in fact at the end of a cycle. If you feel like you were supposed to continue with something and continue doing something, the end of May may have showed you that you actually are done with that you're moving on from something. It doesn't have to be super evident, again, like a new job, house, something like that. It can be internal. It can be like a reliance on something, a way of thinking. Maybe you're always so worried about something and now you're realizing that you don't have to worry about it. Or maybe you're so used to stressing yourself out, or maybe you always show up a certain way, or you say things and those usually, you know, didn't have any effect on you, but now maybe you're being a little bit more aware of your words, or you're being more conscious of how the thoughts that you're having, or the routines that you have, the health habits that you practice, those are really important. And this can be what you realize is changing in your life or transitioning. So the full moon in Sagittarius, though, will be in your 6th house. Now, this can look like closing things out in a more tangible way. So that new moon likely showed you that you might be closing something out or ending something, but the full moon in Sagittarius on the 14th is going to show you how to actually take action or make something tangible to move on to the next step. So let's say that you're moving out of a location. Around the 14th, you might actually start to move. You might actually start to pack things up or to get rid of things. The full moon is about releasing, and it's going to be in a place of your chart where there can be a lot of little baggage or details or things that all are just kind of gathered together. The 6th house can deal with your local environment, it can deal with your job, it can deal with your routines and your health and your habits. And so for a lot of Cancer placements, this is really going to be a time to take an opportunity to clear things out of your life. Get rid of things that you don't need. Say, you know, goodbye to something that is not working anymore, or just let go of an old thought system or belief system that's not serving you. And this is going to be helpful to you, and probably a lot easier than maybe it has been in the past, because with Mercury retrograde moving from your 11th to your 12th, you're going to have some mental stamina to actually close something out. Maybe you feel like you haven't been mentally strong enough to let something go, or to stop doing something, or to move on from something. Well, by the end of this month, you're going to be feeling very, very confident or refreshed in a new beginning. You're going to feel like you finally understand why you had to let something go, why you had to leave something behind. But the beauty of the full moon is that it can offer us an opportunity to kind of give grace to what has been, or to just give our gratitude to things that have already occurred. And so this will be a really good time for Cancer placements to take time to say goodbye, to take time to enjoy this chapter that you're in, and realize that just because it's not as exciting as it once was, or just because there is a new chapter coming for you, that doesn't mean that you have to be upset with the ending. That doesn't mean that endings are inherently bad. You know, Cancer is a cardinal sign, so it's about beginnings, but sometimes we have to slow ourselves down and realize that the beginnings are just as important as the endings. And this is where this month is going to show you that if you take the time to really just slow down the speed at which you're aiming forward, and instead, you know, assess the baggage, assess the things in your life. This is going to help you to step into a new beginning without taking that baggage with you. To be clear, it's like if you're going on a trip and you pack last minute, you might throw a bunch of stuff in that you don't need. But if you plan ahead and you really think it through and you take your time, then when you're on that trip, you probably are not going to have to worry about things that otherwise maybe would have stopped you in your tracks if you had thrown things together too fast. It's like if you don't pack something that you need, well then when you're on your trip, you're gonna have to waste time and go get that thing or figure out what to do because you didn't plan ahead. And so there's just a sense this month of being okay with not having a lot of things going on for Cancer placements, and because this is gonna change by the end of the month. By the end of the month, you're gonna have a lot of things starting, a lot of things beginning. You might have opportunities that really start to come in this month, but it's asking you to approach them in a more slow and steady way, especially if you're used to doing things super quick in the past. If you're like, let's just say yes to the new beginning, like screw that, I'm leaving it behind, I don't need it anymore. This month is gonna ask you to be a little bit more diligent with closing things out, finishing things, because you don't want to have to come back and do it again. And with Jupiter and Mars in your 10th house at the top of your chart, activating your career sector, activating how you're being seen by the world, there's a sense of not rushing important projects, not rushing things, because it's going to be evident if you've rushed it. It's going to be obvious if you're stuck in this cycle of speeding things up and doing things super quick. You know, that can feel okay at times, but you may look back later and be like, ooh, that didn't look very good. I wish I didn't do it like that, or I wish I hadn't made that decision or said that so quickly, because that's not how I actually felt. And so this month is going to show you that it's okay to go slow, and it's okay to not have anything going on, because that moment of silence and stillness is actually what's preparing you for this new beginning. And the new moon in Cancer in your sign on June 28th is going to represent your new beginning. So don't fear, it's coming, it's going to come, but try to let yourself be grateful with closing out this cycle and realize how amazing it was. Even if it's not exactly what you wanted, maybe there's some problems in your life right now. That's fine. We all have problems. But this is the time to be grateful for the things that have already happened, because there's a lot to look forward to, but there's also a lot to be happy about that's already happened. Okay, Cancers, have a good month. Okay, Leos, happy June. It looks like you guys are starting a really big project right now, or you're in a very important time of commitment, of creativity, of putting yourself out there in a new way. Maybe you are stepping into a new community, a new job, a new role, or you're just starting to do things in a more creative way or in a different way than you used to. And this can be very exciting, especially because Jupiter in Aries is aspecting Leo placements, trining Leo, and that fire on fire energy is very activating. And so Leos, you guys might feel very, very excited about something right now. Maybe you have an idea and you're ready to get it out there and you're ready to move forward with it. Maybe you are in a new place, or you're in a new position, or you're just feeling really happy about what's going on in your life. Maybe nothing is new, but you are feeling new with something in your life. And don't worry, there's nothing too dramatic going on this month. You probably went through a lot of the ups and downs of the emotional turbulence of eclipse season in May, but this month is here to show you that the things you're working on are really going to pay off, but they will ask you to take them seriously and to not rush yourself and to not burn yourself out. And that's because we have Saturn retrograde in your 7th house of relationships and commitments, which means that A lot of you might be in a new commitment, whether that be a work partnership or a relationship, or you might just be committing to yourself in a new way, committing to do something differently. And this is going to be very rewarding for you guys ultimately, but because Saturn's retrograde right now, it's going to show you what needs to be done in order to take on this responsibility. So it may show you that if you've signed up for something and you're like, oh, this will be easy, I'm just going to wing it. This month it's going to be like, you can't really wing it, because you want to take your time, you want to do it right because it's important, you care about it, it represents who you are. And with the North Node at the top of your chart right now, there's an emphasis on being seen, on having things come together. And for a lot of you, it's just going to naturally happen. You're just going to notice that things are really working out for you. You don't have to hold on to the past anymore because you're free from it. You freed yourself from something that was holding you down, holding you back, and now you have an open canvas or a new fresh start ahead of you. But because Saturn is retrograde in your 7th, it is going to ask you to take your commitments seriously. And so in taking your commitments seriously, it doesn't mean that you can't be creative and you can't brainstorm and you can't just try things, because a lot of you will want to do that this month, as we have the full moon in Sagittarius in your 5th house of creativity, of children, of dating, of romance. There's going to be a sense of having events around things that are fulfilling to you, things that are pleasurable to you. But at the same time, the new moon that happened at the end of May, May 30th, was in your 11th house, and this is opposite the 5th. And so when we're dealing with that axis of energy, the 11th house and the 5th house, this deals with like short-term ideas, like a spontaneous idea, a creative project, kind of just being in the flow, and how that leads us to long-term reward, to long-term projects, to putting ourselves out there and being seen and rewarded for the work that we do. And so for a lot of you Leo placements, this month is going to show you that your ideas are good. Like your creative ideas are great. There's a lot of options for you creatively, but it is going to ask you to choose something, to identify something, or to just have a very clear system for how you're going about this commitment or this new approach to something. It's like if you are trying to put something together, if you're trying to make something, if you're trying to set something up, it's going to be good. It's going to work out really well, but it will require that you figure out the system for doing it. And that's what Saturn retrograde in your 7th is actually here to assist you with. It's going to show you what not to do, so that you can get very clear on how to make something work. It's like, let's use an example here. If you're working on a song, you're trying to write a song or something, this month is going to be very creative for getting all of those ideas out there. Like, let's just get into a flow and sing and see where it goes. The full moon in your 5th house on the 14th is going to give you that creative flow to just try something new, or to just go back to your old projects even and get creative inspiration from it. There's a sense of seeing something and being able to creatively allow yourself to flow into it. But Saturn retrograde says that doing something the right way is important. So you want that song to be seen, or you want that song to be completed, or you want to make that song viral, or whatever it is. And there's a certain way to do that. So it's like certain parts of projects require open creativity, whereas other parts of projects require very structured systems. And this month for Leos, it's about balancing that, realizing that you can be creative. You don't have to always be so stuck with one way of doing something. But when you are creative, there's a complement to that creativity that is about putting it into the right system, or putting it in the right order. And so this month you might just be figuring out what works and what doesn't work. You might be trying a new system, and maybe you tried a new routine or something in your life and it worked really well for a while, but maybe it's not working anymore. Saturn retrograde in your 7th is going to say it's okay when things only work for a certain time, because there's a new system, there's a new approach that's going to help you for this new project, for this new chapter of your life. And in another view of this, looking at this from less of a career standpoint, this is also going to have a lot to do with dating and relationships and children. So the full moon in Sagittarius for Leo placements, this can look like events with your children. This could look even like a pregnancy for some of you, or maybe just having a lot of good times, maybe getting pregnant, or just doing the activities that would lead you to getting pregnant. At the same time, Saturn in your 7th is saying that when you do something that could lead to a long-term commitment, you have to be aware of what you're doing. So it's like having like unprotected sex is not a very good decision, right? If you're not in a committed relationship, let's say, and no judgment, but let's say that that is a context that you might be in. Well, this month is going to show you that it's better to have a certain system about how you approach those things so that you don't get yourself into a negative consequence, so that you don't put yourself into something that you have to figure your way out of. It's like if you have been dating or seeing someone or in a relationship with someone, and you know in the back of your head that something isn't working, or you don't want to move forward with something, but you haven't really expressed that. Well, by the middle of this month, you might realize that it's really important that you express yourself, because that is what is going to help you to be free in that situation. Like if you are dating someone and they're taking it very seriously, but you're not taking it seriously, it's important to express that to them and to tell that to them, because if not, you might find yourself in a stickier situation later, which is, well, why didn't you tell me that earlier? You know, why didn't you say that when I told you I wanted a commitment? And you weren't ready. Why didn't you tell me that then? Those are the kind of things that could come up this month. And that is, again, just because Saturn retrograde in your 7th just shows you how important commitment is. It's not saying that you have to make a commitment to everything, but it's saying that if you're taking action that is leading you to some kind of a commitment, or if you are giving off the approach that you've committed, it's like saying like, oh yeah, I'll do that job, or I'll do that, not a problem. But then not thinking about the actual responsibilities that go into that commitment, that might not help you very much this month. Instead, if you can kind of take a step back and look at something from a bigger picture and realize that it's okay to just, you know, tell someone the truth, or it's okay to say you're not ready for a commitment, or you're not ready for something, or you need to focus on something else, like that might be what gives you a big relief this month. And it will be really important to identify what those situations are in your life where you might be overcommitting, because anything that you're overcommitting to right now is going to really throw off a balance with resting and with taking action, or like, you know, sleeping and being awake. And this is because Cancer season is going to activate your 12th house. The new moon in Cancer on June 28th will activate your 12th. And this can represent closing out a cycle, some kind of an ending, but it's also just going to be a time when you're going to need to have some time and space to rest, to take care of yourself, to not have to do as much, because you might not have all of the energy in the world towards the end of the month, especially if you use up all of your resources and all of your energy early on this month. By the end of the month, you might be like, oh my gosh, I wish I hadn't said yes to this, because I also said yes to this, and this, and now I don't have time for myself, or now I'm exhausted, or now I'm sick. And so there's just an emphasis this month on being clear about what you're committed to, what your obligations are. If you already have, you know, X, Y, and Z commitment, but you're so excited about this new project, and you're like, well, I don't want to do this anymore because I want to do this now, or like, I don't want to be in this dating situation because I want to date this person now. There's just a sense of realizing that you have to kind of address your current commitments and your current obligations before you can make a big commitment to something else, because you might then end up in the same situation. And there's also an invitation to say that it's okay to be creative and not commit to something. Like, it's okay to do something just for fun. Not everything you do has to be a job, or not everything you do has to, you know, pay off in some big way or make sense with all the other things you're doing. We can do things just for fun. Just, you know, go dance just because you like dancing. Go draw just because you like drawing. Write a song just because you like music. It doesn't have to mean that you're stepping into a big commitment, or you're changing your career, doing something big. Now, some of you will be doing that, but this month really just invites you to get clear on what you are currently committed to, and allow yourself to be creative without always feeling obligated to make that commitment, or to like date without feeling like you have to get into a relationship, for instance. So overall, Leos, I think this month is going to be a great time to see the possibilities for your own imagination, but also to get comfortable with realizing that the systems in your life are very important for making sure that you have the space to be creative, you have the space to be free. Okay, Leos, have a great month. Virgos, welcome to June. You guys might have been pretty focused on your home life or your relationships for the majority of this year, maybe just for the past couple of months, but this month is likely going to bring you back into a work scenario, or focus more on your career, or you may just learn that you need to balance the two. And this is because the new moon in Gemini is happening at the top of your chart in your 10th house, and the full moon in Sagittarius on June 14th is happening at the bottom of your chart in your 4th house of home and family. And so there is an emphasis here on what's going on at work, what's going on with with your own professional life and what's going on at home, what's going on with your family. Around the 14th, you might have some events in the home or with your family that do require your attention. This can also just be an emotional moment where you might be coming full circle with something, realizing why something has happened, looking at the past, finding a little bit of understanding about your own emotional comfort with something or your own emotional discomfort with something. There may be a big picture moment this month that gives you clarity on things that have played out in the past. At the same time though, again, because the new moon and Gemini at the end of May happened at the top of your chart, this is going to show you that there's something new in your career or something new at your job that's calling your attention. You might be getting excited about something that's coming up. This could be a job, this could even be a trip or a new job or the opportunity for a new profession or going down a new career path. And for a lot of you, this is going to be very rewarding because the Taurus and Scorpio eclipses happened in your 9th and your 3rd house, which was meant to show you that there's more options and perceptions for what you're looking at. Maybe you have been looking at relocating somewhere or going on a trip, traveling, or maybe you're in school and this could be a time when you are closing things out in school, finishing a class or a course or even graduating and realizing that even though you've had to focus so hard on this for so long, now you're ready to open up your horizons and see something new. Now you're ready to put yourself out there in a new way. Now, at the same time, Jupiter and Mars will be in your 8th house this month, and Jupiter in Aries is going to be here most of the year. And so with this happening in your 8th house, this is more of a private place. And because Jupiter is about growth and Mars is about action, it's going to require that this month you might have a little bit less time to just, like, let's say, go with the flow or let things happen and not really have a system or a plan for it. This month you might realize that the time you're spending alone or the time you're spending in private or away from work or away from your home is very important. So you might notice that you don't have as much time for socializing or doing things that you did have time for a couple months ago. And so because of that, when you have time alone right now, it's very valuable to you. We know Virgos love to spend their time alone. And so you might find that you have to kind of get an escape a little bit this month because you have so many things going on, so many obligations or so many things to do, or you're focusing on external events, which isn't a bad thing. But this month might show you that there's also the importance of doing things in your own way, in your own time. And a lot of times with the 8th house as well, this can be about deeper intimacy in a relationship. And because Jupiter was in your 7th house for the beginning of this year in Pisces, a lot of Virgos have been in a new relationship, or you've been dating, you put yourself out there. There's been some kind of growth when it comes to what you want in a relationship, what you know about yourself in a relationship, how you show up in a relationship. And now that Jupiter's in your 8th house, this is kind of taking that to that next level, but almost to a deeper level. And so this is where you might notice that if you've been seeing someone, things are going to get more intimate. If you have been withholding yourself in some way from like an emotional reality, like you're like, I don't want to put my heart out there, or I don't want to experience this range of emotions. This month might show you that, like, actually you kind of got to feel those things. You got to feel the feels. It might show you also that there's some very rewarding feelings that come from being vulnerable with people, that come from sharing intimacy with people. Now, with Mars being here too, some of you guys might just be having a good time in bed. However that applies. You might just be enjoying it yourself with other people, enjoying that intimacy. And for others, it's going to really, again, deal with that alone time. The things that you do when nobody is watching, the meditation practice that you have or you don't have, the things that you do to get up in the morning and the things that you do to go to bed at night. Those little routines are very important for Virgos right now. And in general, Virgos really tend to focus on those things. So you may be noticing that you're developing some new habits, or that you need to develop some new habits. And this is going to be very helpful for Virgo placements this month if you can find a good routine or a ritual around something in your life. So like, let's say that you have to get up and go to a new job, or you just have to get up and go to work. And maybe this has been a little bit of a headache for you. Maybe you feel like you have, again, too many things going on and you're like, I don't have any time to myself right now. I don't know what to do. Realizing that if you take a 5-minute walk, or if you just take 2 minutes to meditate, or if you go to bed a little bit earlier, if you wake up a little bit earlier, those little changes in your life can bring you a lot of reward and a lot of peace. And so those are the things that this month you might notice are very helpful and plentiful to you. So you might notice that there's some new routines that you see someone else do, or you learn about, or you read about, or like systems thinking, meaning that you discover a system for approaching something that has been complicated in your life, and you figure out a way to simplify it. Well, this month is going to really help you to do that. So especially as it relates to, again, balancing the home life and the work life, if you feel like you haven't had any time to do certain things that you want to do, maybe it's like you want to go to a class, or you want to learn about something, you want to just read, or you want to watch TV, but you don't have any time to do it. This month you might see that actually there's ways to fit those things in that maybe you didn't see before. Luckily, with that North Node in your 9th house, there's horizons that are really available to you now that maybe weren't there before. And this is going into next year too. Now, again, for a lot of Virgo placements, this has to do with education, but it may not be obvious education, like being in school. Now, it can be. For a lot of you, you are in school, and this month will maybe be finishing something out. Maybe you're going to start completing a project that will be very rewarding for you going into July. But it can also just do with that spiritual learning that happens in the 9th house and in the 8th house. So a lot of Virgos, for you, you might be going through some kind of spiritual awakening right now. You might be realizing that the way that you used to do things just doesn't feel good anymore. It doesn't work for you. It's not good for your health. And this month, there's new routines. There's new ways of doing something. Maybe you're in a relationship and this person does things differently than you're used to. And maybe at first you're like, I don't want to do things like that. But maybe now you're living with them, or you're seeing them more, and you're like, actually, that's really helpful for me to try. So I'm going to try that. I'm going to take that on. Maybe you have a mentor or a teacher or a guide or a boss who has really been showing you how to do something or teaching you something. This month is going to invite you to start applying the things that you know. And this is where, again, a lot of Virgos might be graduating or just getting an internship or something, where you're taking the knowledge that you have and you're applying it to something that's very real and tangible. But there is that emphasis on the simplification. Now, Virgos, I will say, if you feel like it's been a mess recently, that was Mercury retrograde. Mercury is your ruler, and so especially for Virgo risings, you might just feel like things have been chaotic. Maybe you felt like you had figured out a system, you figured out how to do something, and then all of a sudden there were too many things, too many factors, and now it's not working, or now you're not sure about something. Well, once Mercury goes direct, which again is on June 3rd, so June 3rd is going to be an important time for Virgos to kind of understand that something is paying off, or it is moving forward. You might get clear on something, make a decision on something, but by June 13th, when Mercury enters Gemini, it's going to start highlighting that 10th house again, where the new moon happened. And so this might be where maybe you're preparing something to turn in, you're working on a project to present, you're working on an idea to put into your business. You might start to see that by the middle of the month, toward the end of the month, things start to really make more sense or pay off, or the habit that you've been building is working. It's like, if you start a habit once, if you do it once and then you expect it to like change your life, probably not going to change your life. But if you do it like 10 times, 20 times, 50 times, eventually it starts to change your life. And so there's a sense of just having a little bit of patience with Mercury still in Taurus in your 9th house right now until the middle of the month. Have a little bit of patience, because something is going to make a little bit more sense later down the road, but it does ask you to be consistent. It's like, if you're starting something new, don't give up just yet. Continue it, and see where it leads, because the evidence is not here yet, but it will be. And the evidence might show up by June 14th, because that is when the full moon in Sagittarius will happen, and that will be in your 3rd house. And so that full moon is going to show you that, that's actually going to be in your 4th house. But that full moon is going to show you that there's an emotional completion, or some kind of completion that pulls the pieces together for you in a way that makes sense tangibly. So for a lot of Virgos, this could deal with the home and family situation, as I had mentioned earlier, but it can also be dealing with those things that I was just talking about, the routines or practices or rituals. It can show you that that actually is working out, and it's changing how you feel. It's changing how you're body is showing up. So don't give up yet, Virgos. There's definitely something to look forward to, but it may require that you just are a little bit more consistent with those new habits and routines that you're working on. Have a great month. Okay, Libras, happy June. This month is really about getting unstuck. If you feel like you have been stuck in a certain thought cycle, in a loop, this month is going to pull you out of that. And that might really be true for a lot of you because Mercury retrograde happened in your 8th house and it's still there. Now, it started in your 9th house, which means that when Mercury first went retrograde on May 10th, there may have been a new idea, a new person, a travel opportunity, information that was presented to you, something with education. And this may have shown you an important piece of information that you needed to see. But maybe you weren't quite sure of how that actually applied to your life yet. And so there could be some pondering. Libras love to ponder. There could be some pondering that you've been doing, thinking about this thing for a while now. And you might be wondering, well, what's this going to turn into? What am I going to do with this information? Where am I going to go next? Well, now that Mercury is direct on June 3rd, it will still be in Taurus in your 8th house for a little bit, which means that there's a sense of still getting clear on something internally. So maybe you're thinking through something that you haven't really shared with anybody yet, you're having ideas, or you're wondering about something that you haven't really made sense of. Well, by the time that Mercury goes back into Gemini on June 13th, this is going to activate your 9th house and it's going to show you those new possibilities. This could be when some of you guys travel or you just start to meet new people, you start to meet people who aren't really like you. You might be exposing yourself to new ideas, a new spiritual practice, new routines. But this is really important for getting out of that stuck mentality and realizing that you do not have to stay in a state of confusion, because for a lot of people, this retrograde was very confusing and you may feel like there's things that still just do not make sense. But don't worry if that's still the case for you for the beginning of this month, because the real theme for Libras here is understanding that you have more options than you realize. Jupiter is in your 7th house as of May 10th. And again, so far, Mercury's been retrograde since Jupiter's been in Aries. So this is going to be the first month where Jupiter's in your house of relationships and there's not a Mercury retrograde. So that means that if you've been unclear about a relationship in your life, maybe a dating situation, you're probably going to get more clear on that by the end of this month, by the middle of this month. If you feel like there's been a halt or a stop with an opportunity in your life, a partnership, or with what you want to do next, or maybe you're not sure about a commitment, maybe someone else isn't sure about a commitment, things are going to really start clearing up for you by the end of this month. Now, I will say we also have Mars in the 7th, which means that simultaneous to Jupiter being in your house of relationships and commitments and bringing you lots of options for commitment, Mars is also about reducing things, taking things away and cutting things out. So this is a very important time for Libras to be discerning and deciding on what you actually want. If you want to just get into a relationship, this is not the time to have that as your priority, because you'll get into one, but it might not be what you want. If you want to get into a commitment, into a new job, and you're just taking the first option available, that's okay. Sometimes we got to do that to, survive, but there's a sense of just having a little bit more perspective on the options that are available to you. It's like, if you feel like you've been having to choose between A, B, or C, and you're so worried that you don't know which one, you're like, I don't really want A, I don't really want B, I don't really want C. Well, wait for D. See what the option D is. There's going to be another option that appears by the end of this month if it hasn't shown up already. And so for Libras, this is the time to really clear out the mental funk and the mental fog of the past. The 8th house is about processing things and feeling things. And so because this has been so activated with the North Node here for you guys, the solar eclipse that happened on April 30th, there's a sense of a major ending that's still kind of occurring in your life. An end of a relationship, a job, or something that you are growing out of. This could be growing out of a way of pleasing or people pleasing, growing out of a way of doing things that don't serve you, just growing up in a certain way. And so this is the time to really understand that you are still closing out a cycle, but because of that, you don't have to rush into something just because there's an option in front of you, or just because you feel like you need a relationship or you need a job. I mean, we do need, to make money, but there's a sense of just realizing that there's more options available even if you haven't seen them yet. And in fact, that's really the point of this, is that if you haven't figured it out yet, it's not meant to make sense yet. If it doesn't make sense yet, it's not meant to. And I really talk about this in the June overall video for everybody, but this is really about understanding the pieces of your life that are forming the puzzle. It doesn't mean that the whole puzzle is together yet, and you don't need to rush that, but it's understanding all of the pieces that are at play. It's like realizing what's influencing your decisions, what's influencing your desires. Venus is still in your 8th house this month, and it's in Taurus, and it's going to be conjunct the North Node later this month. And so there's a sense of having an emotional conclusion that's very important for you, but it may require that you see things from a different perspective. So for instance, if there's an ending that occurs in your life, or like let's say you're dating somebody and it doesn't really work out, or you're in a new job and it's not really what you thought it would be, or whatever it is, there's a sense of coming to an emotional conclusion as to why this is happening, and getting perspective on how even the bad things in our life ultimately lead us to good. And I know it's definitely not always easy to see things like that, especially when you have to deal with very hard things like death and loss and grief. But there's always something around the corner. And every time we come from the 8th house to the 9th house, that's when you get to actually peek your head around and see what's on the horizon, see what's waiting for you, see why certain endings had to happen. Now, because Saturn is retrograde in your 5th this month, and the 5th house is about dating and children and romance, some of you may feel that you're wanting to go back into a relationship or back with somebody, or you're wanting to go back to an earlier version of yourself, let's say even a less mature version of yourself. Like maybe you used to show up a certain way in friendships or in dating, and you kind of grew out of that. Well, this month you might feel like you're actually kind of showing up like that again, and that's okay. But it's here to show you that there's an approach that is needed to the way you're making decisions, because making a decision just because you want something and not because you know that it's good for you or not, can really kind of put you in a sticky situation later down the road. And chances are, Libras, you've already dealt with that this year. Meaning if you were, in a commitment and you just kept going with it anyway, or if like the 5th house can also deal with attachments and pleasure and the things that can be a little bit abused, there's a sense of realizing that certain things can provide momentary gratification, like taking that extra shot, or saying yes to something when you don't really want to, or dating someone just to date someone. Those can provide that momentary gratification, that momentary pleasure, but they do come with consequences, or they do come with effects. And this is where this month is going to ask you to look at things from a wiser point of view. Look at how you've already learned a lot of lessons in romance and dating, specifically over the past 2 years. And now is the time to start implementing those lessons. So it's like if you got out of a relationship and you know that the relationship ended because of X, Y, and Z. Some of it had to do with them, some of it had to do with you, some of it had to do with both of you, whatever it is. This month is going to show you how to identify those things so that you don't repeat them again. It's like realizing that you might attract certain people who are great for dating, or who at an earlier point of your life, at a younger time of your life, were great for having fun with, but now you're looking for a real commitment. Now you're ready for a real relationship. And so maybe you're not going to date the same people that you did before, because those people were actually not really who you want to be in a relationship with. They were just more people you have fun with. And so there's a sense this month of realizing that if you want this commitment in your life, or if you want something that's really important to you, really big, something that lasts a long time. Saturn cycles 30 years in your 5th house. It's talking long-term cycles of dating. So something that lasts a long time, then it's important to take your time getting into that decision. You don't want to rush the decision. Now, for a lot of you, this will have to do with career, but I have really good news for you with career. I think a lot of Libras have been waiting for some career momentum, for something to change. Maybe you've been in and out of jobs, or stuck with work or something. Well, this month is going to give you new career opportunities. It could be a promotion in your current career, in your current job. It could just be that you're spending a lot more time at work, or you're feeling more seen, you're feeling more yourself at work. Maybe you're in a new work environment and you're starting to get along with your coworkers more. And this is because Cancer season is activating your 10th house. And so so this is going to activate an area of your chart that has to do with you being seen for the work that you do and the things that you contribute. And this can also have to do with wanting to be seen in a different way. The new moon in Cancer on June 28th is going to provide some unexpected new opportunities for Libras when it comes to career. And so for a lot of Libras, this will be the job you've been waiting for. This will be the promotion you've been waiting for, or feeling happy in the job that you're currently at. But at the same time, this can also be with how you're being seen or portrayed. So this can also just deal with the way that you're showing up. Maybe you cut your hair, you change your hair color, you change the way you dress, you change the way you do your makeup, you change the way you speak, whatever it is. There's a sense of starting to identify what is the version of yourself that you want to show to the world. How do you want to show up? And this is where, again, it can apply to many different parts of your life too, where if you've always shown up a certain way in dating scenarios, but you've only attracted people who aren't ready for relationships, well, this month you might realize, oh, if I want to attract people who are ready for relationships, then I need to be presenting myself as someone who's ready for a relationship. I need to be looking for people in places that are looking for relationships, you know? So there's a sense of this month showing you that the opportunities you've been waiting for are here. They're available to you. And again, with Jupiter in your 7th, they're going to be more than you've asked for. But it does require that you're aware of how you're showing up. Are you showing up as a past version of yourself, as a younger version of yourself? Are you showing up as someone who other people made you think you were? It's like maybe you were in a job and you had to just kind of like play the role. You know, certain jobs can be so funny where coworker dynamics can really put people in a certain way of showing up that isn't always who they really are. And you might have had to show up a certain way in a previous job or at school or in a friend group or in a relationship. And maybe you got used to being like this person, like, oh, they're the funny one, or oh, they're the serious one, or whatever it is. Maybe you're like, I don't want to be the funny one anymore. I don't want to be the serious one. I don't want to be the one who never has my shit together. I want to be this person. I want to be this version. And in allowing yourself to show up in that new version of yourself, or to show yourself differently, to play a different role, this is what will attract those aligned commitments, the aligned job, the aligned coworkers, the aligned community, the aligned relationship. So Libras, don't give up on yourself just yet, but allow yourself to play a different role. Allow yourself to try something new, because there's a lot of new opportunities on the horizon, and you're going to start seeing them as soon as June 21st. Have a great month. Scorpios, welcome to June. Are you feeling your power yet? This is the time for you guys to be stepping into that power, and I know you have it. And also, congratulations on making it through May. I know May was probably not very easy for you guys. Taurus has the lucky North Node with them, but you guys are dealing with the South Node, which means that this is here to tear things away from you that are not meant for you. And sometimes when we hold on to things too tightly and we don't want to give it up, sometimes the higher hand, the universe, or God, or whatever it is, has to come in and tear those things away from us so that we can actually move forward with our life. And so this is a time this month in June that Scorpios, it's time to admit that you are as powerful as you know you are. Even if you have not always had the people around you or the circumstances that have allowed you to feel as powerful as you think you are, this is the month that's going to really show you that you are powerful and you can move forward. You can get on with your life. If you've had to deal with a major ending, which a lot of Scorpio placements have had unfortunate endings occur recently, perhaps unexpected events, this is the time to really acknowledge what's happened, acknowledge that you are still here anyway. You made it through it. Even if you had to get through a very, very difficult situation, you made it. You're still here. And a lot of people might be depending on you right now, which this can be fulfilling for some of you. This can be empowering for some of you. But some of you may also feel like you don't want people to depend depend on you right now because you need to depend on yourself. And this is where the North Node in Taurus in your 7th house and the activation in your 7th house this month with Mercury going direct there, with Venus in your 7th, it's giving you a lot of support in relationships, but it may require that you show people who you really are. This might mean that you have to say something that's a little bit hard to hear to someone. This might mean that you have to set some boundaries that are not the easiest to set. This could also mean that you have to step up and take more responsibility than you're used to. But I'm here to tell you that you've got the power. You have got the power. Mars and Jupiter are activating your 6th house right now in Aries, and Mars is your ruler. And because Mars is in Aries, it's in a confident place, it's in a powerful place. And so especially for Scorpio risings, you're gonna really have the momentum that you need to get things done this month. This could be a month where you realize you have to kind of turn your emotional your emotions just down a little bit. It's not that you're not feeling things. You know, again, I talk a lot about how in May, this eclipse season and the nodes in Taurus and Scorpio is really about letting yourself feel things. But right now, this month, you might realize that you're done thinking, you're done feeling, you're done contemplating, you're done worrying, you're done wondering if you can do something. This is the time to do it. Just try it. Just get yourself out of it and move forward. And you're gonna be able to do it. If you've been trying to let something go, let go of a bad habit, move out of a bad situation, or just move on from something, or change something, rearrange something, redesign something, this is gonna be very empowering for you this month to be able to do that. Looking at the overall transits for you guys, it looks like a lot of you are going to be making some kind of an investment, or you're going to be making some kind of a transition in your personal home life. So this can look like redecorating or redesigning a location or your home. Maybe you have felt really stuck with something and you're like, I'm tired of feeling stuck. I'm gonna redesign my house, or I'm just gonna rearrange the furniture. That's something that could be very empowering for Scorpio placements this month. On the other end of that, this might be a much bigger scenario for Scorpios, meaning you might be getting rid of a car and buying a new car, selling a house and moving into another house. You might have had an obligation or a responsibility that was put on your plate that was unexpected. Because the new moon and the full moon this month, the new moon that was on May 30th in Gemini, and then the full moon in Sagittarius that is going to happen on June 14th, because these are happening in your 2nd and your 8th house, this does deal with ownership and with responsibility, and it can also deal with death and with grief. And so some of you guys might, and I would say like inheritance as well, and all those logistical things that are associated with someone moving on from this world, or someone just literally moving to a different state or something. So a lot of you guys might notice that this month you have to just kind of get through the logistics of things, organize things. Like you might have had something that was passed on to you, or something that, you know, you're now responsible for that someone else was taking care of, but someone has to step up in your family and you're the one to do it. Now, some Scorpios might be actually setting some more boundaries with their family and saying, I'm actually not going to do that. I'm actually not available to do that. But a lot of you guys are going to feel confident that you're strong enough to maintain yourself and who you are and what you've achieved or what you need to achieve. And you're also going to be able to show up for other people because you have that extra power right now. You have that extra momentum. Some people in your life may not have that right now. Some people in your life may be a little bit worried or wondering, or they're processing something in a different way than you're processing something. And you might realize that right now you're being invited to step up in your life. Now, it's not about pressure to do that. It's not about saying you have to do something or you don't have to do something, but it's about realizing that there's always a divine role in our life that we play, and this role changes. And so maybe you've played the role of brother or sister or husband or wife or boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever. And maybe now, because of something that's happened, you now have to play a different role. Maybe now you're the head of the household. Maybe now you're in a different household. Maybe now you have to help someone because they can't help themselves anymore. And I, again, want to tell you that you have that power to be that person this month. Saturn retrograde is happening in your 4th house of home and family. And so this does represent changes in responsibility in the home and in the family. And so this can mean, taking on more responsibility, taking on something that you didn't have to do before. And I won't lie, it's not going to be that easy right away. With Saturn retrograde, it can feel like you're questioning your ability to do something. You're like, I don't think I can do that. I've never done that before. I'm used to this, and now this whole new situation is in front of me. But I'm here to tell you that you are going to surprise yourself, and you're probably going to surprise other people too. Someone that has previously been in your life, or maybe just in general, there may have been circumstances in which you were not responsible for doing things like making a big purchase, or organizing paperwork, or signing a contract, or delegating responsibility. But this month you might have to start doing that. You might just have, if no one else is going to step up and do it, you might be like, well, I'll be the one to step up and do it then. The key, though, is that you don't lose yourself in this process. And I don't think you will. I don't think you need to worry about that. But there is a sense of, with the South Node in your sign this year, it's about releasing layers of yourself that are just ready to fall away, that rebirth. And you guys are so naturally good at that, death and rebirth. You can reinvent yourself all the time when you let yourself, or you go through major phases in life where you reinvent yourself. And this is a major phase in life where you're reinventing yourself. But it may mean that you do have to be a little bit fragile with giving yourself enough space to show up differently. So if you have too many people depending on you, too many people telling you to do something, too many obligations and responsibilities, that fire energy of Mars and Jupiter and Aries in your 6th house can put a little bit of inflammation on your life, meaning you might deal with some health issues, or you might deal with some, kind of that feeling of like having a headache from not getting enough sleep, having burnout from doing too many things. So there's a sense of needing to be aware of what you're working on and of what you need to do, but not overwhelm yourself to the point where you can't do it. It's like you might have this surge of energy now, or this surge of power or inspiration or motivation to do something in your life, to take action on something, but it doesn't mean that you want to overdo it. I love this quote: everything in excess becomes its opposite. So it's like when we do something too much, it becomes the opposite. That's like the spectrum or the pendulum or the extremes that I've been talking about. And so this is a big theme for Scorpios specifically still, is that when you push yourself to one extreme, again, you're going to go to the other one. And so there's a sense of learning how to balance that power in your life. It's like you don't have to use all your energy at once. You don't have to use all of your power at once. You don't have to make something more dramatic than it needs to be, because that can actually be what drains you of the power or the energy that you need to do the things you have to get done. And so Scorpios, I think a lot of you are going to just really be stepping into your power this month, realizing the magnitude of your capabilities. Even if you've been underestimated before, or even if you've underestimated yourself, or you've played it safe, this is the month to realize that it's okay to step up. It's okay to be the person that is there for someone else, or to be the person who's there for yourself, or to be the person who takes on the new role that no one else wants to do. And in doing that, you might be rewarded for the boldness of that, for the risk that you're taking. And for a lot of Scorpio placements, the confusion around something that may have happened, like let's say there was an unexpected event or something that you're still processing, that's also going to start making more sense this month as Mercury is moving direct. And so Mercury goes direct in your 7th house, and then it moves into your 8th house. And the new moon in Gemini was in your 8th house on the 30th. And so when we deal with the 8th house, it is again endings, it can be death, it can be inheritance, shared resources. This may do with a relationship, a marriage, or a divorce. And you may be thinking, well, all these situations are happening at once and I don't know how it's going to come together, but I'm just going to get through the actions anyway, or I'm just going to do something that I can right now. And that is what I advise you to do, because as Mercury moves forward now, and once it moves back into Gemini on June 13th, this is going to start giving you some clarity on how to close something out. So if you have to initiate some kind of a cycle ending, or you have to be the one who's kind of bringing things together, or you have to be the one who has to say, I have to end this, I can't do this anymore, I'm ending this relationship, this job, or whatever it is. This is the time when you're going to start getting more clarity in the middle of the month. And beyond this, by the end of the month, when we start Cancer season, this is activating your 9th house. And so by the end of the month, you're going to start feeling much more refreshed. Let's say that you are taking on a new role, or you're having to put yourself out there. By the time that we get to Cancer season on June 21st and on the new moon in Cancer on June 28th, this is happening in your 9th house of new sights ahead, traveling, adventure, seeing something from a new perspective, spirituality. So a lot of you are going to realize that just by taking action this month, you are therefore helping yourself out in the future. Like, even if it doesn't make sense yet, even if you don't emotionally feel ready to do something, taking action anyway is going to be what helps you to get to that emotional conclusion. Hopefully that makes sense for you guys, and I hope you have a great June. Sagittarius placements, welcome to June. This month is really about realizing that the habits and routines that you've been working on are going to pay off, and you don't have to go backwards, and you don't have to repeat something just to learn the lesson again. With the new moon in Gemini that happened on May 30th, that was in your 7th house of relationships. A lot of you guys might be in a new relationship, putting yourself out there again to be in a commitment, or just dating and enjoying it. And the full moon in Sagittarius is happening in your sign in the middle of the month, which means that it's going to be all about you. There might be an event in your life that has you at the center of it. And this can be, you know, good, bad, neutral, whatever, but it's going to involve you. So if you've had your focus on someone else in your life or something else in your life, this is the time to bring it back around and think about how you're feeling, what you want, and bring yourself to a conclusion that is important for you. And for a lot of Sagittarius placements, it's really about growing up and growing out of a previous version of seeing something and communicating. And this is because Saturn retrograde is going retrograde in your 3rd house of communication, and also of siblings and local transportation. A bunch of random different things there, but ultimately, the 3rd house is about the way that we interact with the world around us. And so Sagittarius placements, you guys might be learning new methods for how you want to show up, how you want to interact, how you want to communicate. And if you're not learning them, this month is going to ask you to really start trying to learn new communication methods. Because if you have been used to saying something a certain way or communicating a certain way, let's say you always just kind of dismiss certain things that people say and don't really take it too seriously, this month might be where you realize that those conversations are very important. Or let's say that you have a certain dynamic with a friend that you grew up with, or with a sibling, or with a neighbor, and this month might help you to see that if you want to change that dynamic, it doesn't mean running away from it or just kind of continuing it and hoping it's going to change, but it actually requires approaching it differently. It actually requires having a different perception or having different methods for how you communicate. So that said, your 5th house will also be very activated this month, which deals with dating and romance and music and creativity and children. A lot of Sagittarius placements are pregnant this year, or you will be pregnant. Heads up. If you don't want to be. And that's because Jupiter's in your 5th house. And so this doesn't just deal with meeting new people and dating, but it also deals with what comes from meeting new people and dating. And you might notice that you're also just thinking about these things, thinking about children, thinking about things that involve that family dynamic. And it really is a joyous place in the 5th house, meaning this is a place where you're going to find that there's things that can bring you a lot of pleasure and fulfillment that maybe you hadn't always thought of before. Pleasure really comes from the 5th house, but there's many different ways that we find pleasure. It's like if you've always been used to getting pleasure from a certain place or a certain person, this month might show you that there's much more options for getting pleasure. It's like if you always are used to, let's say, only having fun when you're drinking or when you're going out or when you're doing drugs or something, which can all deal with the 5th house. This is going to be the time, this is going to be the month where you start to understand that you can have those feelings in other ways, and specifically in healthier ways. Because this 6th house is so activated, and the 12th house is so activated for Sagittarius this year with the North Node and the South Node there, it's really about developing healthier habits that are thinking about your life long term, thinking about your health long term, not just doing something in the moment because it's fun. Maybe you're so used to putting your body through X, Y, and Z, and you haven't usually had any issues with that. But now you might start to notice that, oh, you're starting to see the effects of doing this repeatedly to your body, or of just aging. Maybe you're noticing that your body's reacting differently to things now, and you have to be attentive to what that is and what that means for you. For a lot of people, this is also, again, dealing with dating. So with Jupiter in your fifth, there's going to be a lot of options for dating. So if you're a single Sagittarius, I have good news for you. You might not be single for much longer. If you want to be single, you can also stay single, but you're going to have a lot of dating opportunities. And with Mars in your fifth house this month, this is also, again, dealing with more of the sexual and sensual side of the fifth house, which is hooking up or having a good time with someone just because you want to have fun. And that's where, again, you might notice that fun is pleasure, but pleasure is not always healthy. Pleasure is not always good for you. And with the South Node in your with the South Node in your 12th house in Scorpio, and with coming out of eclipse season last month, there's an emphasis on realizing that if you've had a thought that's been lingering in your mind that you know is not good for you, or you know that you're holding on to an attachment or an addiction or something that's really not good for you, this month is going to give you a clear way out. It's going to show you the light. It's going to give you a green light to move on. It's going to say, you don't have to do that again. You don't have to continue doing that. There's much better options, and you're going to feel happier. You're going to feel healthier if you can just step in that direction. And Sagittarius placements, yeah, it might be a little bit difficult at first, but with Jupiter being in Aries, it's aspecting Sagittarius. It's a trine, and so it's giving you the momentum that you need to make changes and to take a new path. Now, with Mercury retrograde going direct from your 6th house into your 7th house of relationships, a lot of you are going to be getting closure on some kind of a romantic situation, a relationship. It could also deal with coworkers or local environment, but it more likely does have to do with a relationship. Now, some of you may notice that a current dating situation is reflecting things that have happened in a previous dating situation, and you may notice that because of that, you have to go backwards and make something clear or close something out, or you just feel like you need to get closure on something that happened in the past. And this is really a good month to actually do that for Sagittarius placements, because as Mercury moves back into your 7th house after going retrograde there on May 10th, it will go back into Gemini on June 13th this month. And this is going to be when those relationships that are really important to you in your life start to become very evident, and the communication that you need to have there is also very evident. So if you need to have a conversation with someone, it's going to happen this month if it hasn't already. If you had a conversation with someone in May when Mercury was retrograde, it might have been kind of a messy conversation. Maybe something's a little unclear. Maybe you're unclear about someone or something. Things are going to start making more sense once Mercury goes direct in Gemini. But as it's still in Taurus right now, this is where it's about clearing things out that are in the way of making those healthier decisions, or of having that clear communication. And I mentioned earlier that Saturn retrograde is happening in your 3rd house of communication too. So you guys really have an emphasis right now on learning how to healthily communicate with people. Maybe you've always had a certain way, again, of saying something, or you've just dismissed certain things, but this month is going to really ask you to take on a little bit more autonomy or authority when it comes to addressing things. And this is what will help you to be in the relationship that you want, or to show up in a commitment that is actually very good for you. So for instance, let's say that you're dating around, or you're just seeing somebody and it's been going great, but maybe you're getting to that phase of the relationship where you're like, is this serious? Is this not serious? Is this something we both want? Well, you have to have that conversation, and it can't be one way. It can't just be you saying, this is what I want, da 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 da. I mean, maybe it can, but conversations are mutual. They go both ways. And so there's a sense of also understanding that it's not just about how you communicate with others, but it's also how you listen to others. And there might be someone in your life that's presenting their needs to you, that's expressing their needs to you, but maybe you haven't really heard them. And this month is going to ask you to slow down and really listen to what they're saying. Maybe someone's saying, I'm not ready for a commitment, or I want this to be a commitment. And maybe you're just thinking, oh, it's just fun, or oh, we don't really need to think about that yet. Well, this month it's going to really show you that you need to have that conversation, and you need to have it clearly. Now, the beauty of this is that Venus is also in your 6th house right now, which means that Venus is coming through to show you a new path ahead when it comes to the way that you approach these things. So the habits that you have in relationships, the way that you might have rules for yourself or rules for somebody else, or the values that you hold in relationships. Maybe you're like, I don't want to be in a relationship, so I'm just going to date. And maybe you've done that again and again and again, but now maybe you're realizing that actually you're ready for something more serious. And again, that means that the conversation that you need to have is also going to have to follow those thoughts that, or those changes in values that you're having. By the time that Venus eventually moves into Gemini, this is also going to activate your relationships and commitments in a very big way. And so for some Sagittarius placements, if you're dating someone, you might find that you get into a real commitment with someone by the end of this month. But that's also where, again, you have to ask yourself, what does this commitment mean? What does this mean from me? What does this mean from them? And how can we come together to have those conversations, to express our needs so that we can be together in a way that works for both of us? But don't worry, because there's a lot of transits here that are going to help you do that and help you figure that out. So have a great month of June, Sagittarius placements. Capricorns, don't give up on love just yet, because by the end of June, you might find yourself in a much more pleasing relationship dynamic, or in a community setting, or just feeling like you can actually put your heart out there again, especially if you feel like you've had to close yourself off to love and joy recently. Capricorns have really gone through it for the past few years, and there's a million reasons why that is, but I'm here to tell you that it's gonna really start getting easier. By the time that Saturn enters Pisces in early 2023, Capricorns are gonna start seeing that the hard things you've had to go through for the past few years are for a reason. They were here to show you that you don't want to settle, you don't want to do something that's not going to help you in the future, and Capricorns are always thinking about the future. So ask yourself right now this month how things in your life that have ended were really for the benefit of showing you what is worth it, showing you what's for you and what's not for you. Because Cancer season is going to start on June 21st, and we have a new moon in Cancer at the end of the month on June 28th. This is going to be in your 7th house of relationships and commitments. A lot of you are going to be making a big commitment, or you're going to be thinking big about commitments, and you're going to finally feel ready to do this. And this is because the Taurus energy that has been activated in your 5th house has been all about dating, but not just dating, but also the past. Thinking about things that have happened in the past, thinking about your childhood, thinking about your relationship to your mother or to your parents, and how those have influenced the way that you might be looking at relationships or looking at commitment. But this month is here to show you that you have a little bit more support than you expected, and sometimes it might mean that you take yourself out of a position of responsibility so that you can let somebody else come in and be responsible for you or to you. It's like if you're always the one that's been supporting someone else, or if you're the one who supports yourself and you don't let anybody else support you, this month is going to show you that actually by surrendering some of that commitment to those responsibilities, it's going to reward you with people who show up to support you. And this is has a lot to do with the fact that Saturn retrograde is happening in your 2nd house. Now, Saturn rules Capricorn, so this is very important for Capricorn placements. You might be wondering about some investments in your life right now, about some commitments. You might be trying to make a big decision, and you might be really going back on something or back and forth with something this month, thinking, is this the right option? Is this the right option? Is this the right path? Should I make this commitment? Should I sign on the dotted line? Should I do this big move? Well, don't worry, because Saturn is going to show you exactly the steps that you need to take, but it may require that you get a little uncomfortable and that you let people help you. When Saturn is direct, you're in authority. You can be the boss. But when Saturn's retrograde, you're not going to have all the momentum that you might usually have to take charge. And this is where that surrender needs to happen so that you can see that you actually have more support than you realized. And some of the things that you might notice this month that come with that support may have to do with a living situation or a community situation or with your family. And that is because Jupiter is at the bottom of your chart, joined by Mars this month in your 4th house of home and family. For a lot of Capricorn placements, this really just looks like making a move, moving out of a house into another house, or having a big change in your family. Could be that someone's born, there's a new person in the family, someone gets pregnant, could be you with all that 5th house energy. A lot of you guys might be having children as well right now, but it can also just be that there's more space available for you in your home life. Maybe there's a family dynamic that's changing. Maybe something's always been like this your whole life, and so you always thought you had to be the responsible one, or you had to be the one that had it all together. But maybe there's certain people in your family or in your life who are actually showing up more than they used to, and now they can take on some of that responsibility, and they want to give you a break. Or maybe it's just time that you take that break. And this is a time where Capricorns might feel like, I can't play yet, I can't rest yet, I can't do anything because I gotta work, right? But again, I'm here to tell you that this month is gonna show you that actually it's okay to take your foot off of the gas every now and then. It's okay to just settle down or set yourself in a place of stillness, because in that place, you're able then to see who is around you to support you. If you're the one who's always trying to be there for others, and you're always worried about what's going on with them, and you don't let them help you, you never really know who can support you and how they can support you. But right now you might be seeing that there's actually a lot of support around you if you simply just take the guard down, if you simply just let yourself relax. I'm a Capricorn, so I get it. It can be hard, right? But there's a sense of this month showing you that there's really good things on the horizon. Even if you've had to go through some very difficult things, there's good things on the horizon. But because there is a big emphasis this month in your second house, and then later in the month in your seventh house, this is activating your chart in a way that requires you to understand the commitments in your life and the responsibilities and investments in your life. And because, again, Saturn's retrograde in your second, it may look like an investment that you had maybe didn't really pan out, or there's something that requires a little bit of a redirection, or you're realizing maybe that the priorities that you've had aren't really important anymore. Maybe you're wanting to have more time in your life for love, for romance. Maybe you're getting into a new relationship and you're like, well, now that I'm in a relationship, I guess I don't have to overwork myself all the time, because now I have time to spend with this person or with these people. And so if there's a sense of letting yourself just enjoy what is going on around you, and also taking off the layers of responsibility or authority in your life that keep you in a state of being busy, that keep you in a state of overwhelm and overworking. It's okay to not always have something to do. It's okay to just, settle down and kind of relax. And this is where Venus and Taurus this month is going to really show you that there's good things to enjoy. There's good things to be involved with right now. Doing something just for fun can be very rewarding, even if there's no tangible physical evidence of that reward. And this month is going to also ask you to really look at how internal views of yourself or of others might be affecting the way that you approach situations. And this is because the new moon in Sagittarius, or the new moon in Gemini that happened on May 30th, was in your 6th house, and the full moon in Sagittarius will be in your 12th house. And so the 6th and the 12th house axis does deal with things that we can't always see, and it deals a lot with the physical and mental and emotional body. So it's the subconscious, it's the mind, but it's also our physical health. And because this is happening for you guys on that axis this month, a lot of you might notice how some commitments in your life that you thought you had to do, like doing a certain job or doing a certain routine that you've done for a long time, you may not have to do it anymore. And by releasing that commitment or obligation, it allows you to have a healthier version of yourself. It allows you to be healthier. Maybe there's something that's been causing a lot of stress in your life, and you're like, well, I just have to get used to this stress. Well, this month is going to show you that you can actually release some of that stress. And maybe you had to have those obligations for a long time, but you don't anymore. And that's the key, because the full moon in Sagittarius is about closing out a major cycle, and this does happen every year. And when it happens in your 12th house, it's about ending something so that you can begin something new when we have a full moon in Capricorn. And so, or an axis of Cancer and Capricorn just activated going into July. And so as we're preparing for that axis to be activated in your 7th house and in your 1st house, when the 6th house and the 12th house is active this month in June, this is about, again, letting yourself rest, letting yourself take a break and see something from a bigger picture, so that you're not pushing yourself so hard that you hit a wall. If you're pushing yourself to do something just because because you think you have to do it, that might be where you start to realize that you have something come up in your health or something come up in your relationships that causes you to slow down. It puts a stop in your plans. But don't think that a stop in your plans is the end of the world, because it's actually probably what's keeping you active. It's probably what's keeping you healthy. So if something comes up this month that requires you to not do something you were doing before, it asks you to take a break. Let's say even you might get sick or something, or you just need to take a break and you can't show up at work. Well, that might be a blessing in disguise. Even though you might feel like you need to get something done, it might be a blessing in disguise to give you some more time to just enjoy life, to just spend time with people, with the people you love, and even invite new people into your life. Because again, by the end of this month, when we start Cancer season on June 21st, and when the new moon in Cancer happens on June 28th, you're going to start seeing that there's a lot of relationships around you that want to support you. So let that support in, Capricorns, and enjoy your month of June. Aquarius placements, welcome to June. I think that this month is going to be very rewarding for you guys, especially if you feel like you've been in a little bit of a slump, or maybe you haven't felt as creative as you usually do. This month is here to re-energize you when it comes to creative projects and just getting your imagination out there. And that is because we kick off this month, well, at the end of May, on May 30th with that new moon in Gemini. That was in your 5th house. Now, the 5th house can deal with dating and romance and children as well. So this may be something that involved any of those things. But for a lot of you, I think this has to do with just the way that you're creatively feeling like you actually have the juice to put into a project or a passion that you have that maybe you feel like you haven't really had all that much momentum for the past couple of months. And that said, by the end of this month, or by the middle of this month, on June 14th, with the full moon in Sagittarius, this is going to be in your 11th house. And so this can look like you have a new idea or a new thought or a new project, a new creation that you're working on at the beginning of the month, and it may come to light by the end of the month. So this could be something you're working on now, and then you're presenting it to the world, or you're presenting it at work, or you complete it by the middle of the month. Now, because this also does deal with relationships or dating and those situations, this can also look like some of you might be putting yourself out there to be dating someone, or you might already be dating with someone, or you might just be thinking about dating again. And this might mean that you are having an idea about who you want to date or how you want to date. And by the middle of the month, by that full moon in Sagittarius on June 14th, in your 11th house, this might be where you actually meet someone, or you go to an event, or you go on a date, and it actually goes really well, because the 11th house can be very, very rewarding. And so I think for this month, Aquarius placements, you're going to be surprised at how young you're feeling again, that almost like childlike sense of joy. If you feel like you've been missing it, it's going to really be coming back this month. But for a lot of you, it does have to do with some situation in your life that could have been on hold for a while. Maybe you were a little bit unsure of or unclear about, but it's going to start making a lot more sense. And this also, again, has to do with the fact that Mercury Retrograde started in your 5th house, went back into your 4th house, and now it's going to go back into your 5th house on June 13th. It'll be direct though. So the beauty of this is that if you feel like you've had something in your life, in your relationships, in your dating life, or even in your home and family life, again, could deal with children, that has been confusing or unclear, or it's been a problem you've been worried about or working on, that's also going to start clearing up for you. And for a lot of you, this does have to do with some kind of a conversation that has already happened, or that needs to happen, or something that you need to express to someone. And that has to do, again, with Mercury moving back into your 4th house of emotions and family and the home. And so maybe there's something that you really had to get across, or maybe you kind of took a break from something so that you could process something emotionally, internally. And once Mercury goes back into Gemini on the 13th, you're going to start having some clear focus as to how you want to approach a conversation, what you need to say, or how you can take some emotions that you've been processing and put it into something creative, put it into a project, put it into artwork. And again, by the time time that we get to that full moon in Sagittarius in the middle of the month, you might see that your new creative outlet is really, really rewarding. It's going to really pay off for you. This could mean starting a new habit or a new hobby, doing something that you used to do as a kid, just kind of getting back to a sense of free-flowing imagination. And Aquarius, this month might ask you to let yourself have a little bit of fun when it comes to that, because Saturn, your ruler, is going to go retrograde on June 4th, and because it's your ruler, and especially for Aquarius risings, it will be in your first house, and so it's going to really have to do with you and your responsibilities. This may mean that some of your responsibilities are changing. You may just have something that you were working on and you complete it and you no longer have that responsibility and you have a little bit of a break. But for some of you, this also has to do with just what you're taking on, how you're disciplining yourself. Now, because Saturn does deal with some responsibility and serious things, this may mean that this month you're really having to take accountability for the things that you're responsible for in your life. But this may also mean starting to get comfortable with not taking on as much responsibility. Some of you may just be finishing a project or even completing a big cycle in your career. Because the South Node is at the top of your chart, it's going to represent closing out a major cycle in your career. And this can mean having more time with your family, having more time at home, feeling a bit more grateful or just happy for the time that you have off and the time that you don't have to be mentally working on something. And this may be where if you find yourself having less responsibility at a job or at work or in some kind of a scenario where you've been putting a lot of effort and energy into, the Saturn retrograde in your first might give you the freedom that you need to get back into a state of flow, to get back into a state of just showing up and not having to feel so much pressure on you. So even though that Saturn retrograde can deal with having to look at the responsibilities in your life, for a lot of you, it's actually going to be about stepping out of a place of responsibility. And now if looking at this again from that big picture point of view, this can look like some of you having a job transition and maybe it's unexpected, maybe you don't want to change your job, maybe some of you are going through a job loss. But again, I'm here to tell you that with the new moon activated in your 5th house, and then with the full moon activating your 11th house, and then later this month with the new moon in Cancer season in your 6th house of work and your environment, anything that is being kind of taken out of your life right now, or any position that you're being taken out of, is very important for understanding the things that you really do want to focus on, or you do need to focus on. So something that might be removed from your life, or you might be removing yourself from something in your life, it can seem like it's not a good thing at first. It can be like, oh my gosh, this objectively is bad, but when you look at it from that bigger picture, there's something that's creatively calling you, or there's something that's asking you to spend a little bit more time on that is really meaningful to you. And so again, this can be about your home and your family or your children. You might start to have a little bit more time to be with them. But at the same time, it's really about what is calling your heart's desire. What do you really want to work on creatively? And some of you might realize that something you've been doing that used to fulfill you, maybe it is something in a job or work, it just might not be as fulfilling as it used to be. And that's okay too, because that may mean that as Saturn goes retrograde in your sign, this is your chance to say, I don't want to do this job anymore. I actually want to do this job now. Or I'm going to switch my role a little bit and take on this responsibility versus this responsibility. But overall, for Aquarius placements, this month is here to kind of re-energize you when it comes to just being in a natural flow state, when it comes to just letting your imagination wander. Maybe you've had to go through something or work on something that had strict parameters. Saturn being in your sign since the beginning of 2021 means that there might be some strict rules you've had to follow for a while. It could deal with something in the home or the family or at work, but with Saturn retrograde, that's why this can actually be a big relief for a lot of you, because it might mean that you don't have to follow those rules anymore, that you can now think outside of the box a little bit more. And I know Aquarians are naturals at thinking outside of the box, so I think that this month is actually going to be quite rewarding for you when it comes to letting yourself be seen for your ideas. Even if it's a little bit different, a little bit out there, a little bit odd, it's probably just the right combination of uniqueness to suit your needs and your desires, even if it doesn't make sense right away, or even if it doesn't make sense to other people. So enjoy the month of June, Aquarius placements, and let yourself be creative. Pisces, welcome to June. This month looks like it's going to have a lot to do with matters of the home and matters of the heart. A lot of you guys might be going through a home transition. Maybe you're moving somewhere, or maybe you're just traveling or making plans to do so. And this month is going to start really pulling all of those pieces together to make sense of it all. Now, the new moon in Gemini that happened on May 30th was in your 4th house of home and family. So this could mean going and visiting a childhood home or spending time with family, but it can also represent a new cycle in your home and your family, or a new emotional cycle for you. This may mean that you had something that kind of was a resolution, or something that came into your perception that showed you that there's something to look forward to or feel very good about that's already in your life. And that said, the full moon in Sagittarius that's happening on June 14th is going to be at the top of your chart, and it's going to have more to do with your direction, where you're going, what you're working on. This can look like finishing a big project that you've been working on. Maybe it has to do with homes or a home, but it can also just look like getting clear on a direction that you want to take, especially if you're trying to figure out what you want to do in career, or you're trying to make a decision on something that you know you've wanted to do for a long time. There's going to be some kind of a resolution or clarity that comes to you this month, but it will have to do with allowing yourself to process your emotions. It's like if you're only in the logical part of your brain, things are not going to make total sense this month. You're a Pisces placement. So you're meant to work with all of the details, all of the emotions. And this month is going to ask you to really listen to your heart space, listen to the things that are calling you. And it may mean that if you've had a divider between home and work life, like if you're like, well, I feel this way, I'm passionate about these things, but I have to do this for work, and this is how I show up here. This month might show you that you can actually take that divider down a little bit, you can take that wall down a little bit, and you can allow yourself to kind of merge things. Maybe you're used to showing up at work a certain way, super serious, or you just have to kind of put on a mask to get through things. This month might show you that it's actually okay to take that mask off. Maybe you get closer with some coworkers, or you start to invite people into your home a bit more, and start to just feel like you can be yourself around people, and it's okay. You can show people your quirky side, and it's okay. That said, there's also going to be an emphasis later this month on dating and romance and children and just having a good time. So some of you might realize by the end of the month that you're just really enjoying a situation that you're in, a relationship that you're in. Some of you guys could be thinking about children. You could even be having children around this time. And that has to do with Cancer season starting in your 5th house. Now that said, Mercury Retrograde is straightening itself out, moving from your 4th house to your 3rd house, and then now in your 3rd house back to your 4th house. And so as Mercury retrograde is going direct in your 3rd house of communication, a lot of you guys might be having a heartfelt conversation that brings you clarity on something, reconnecting with old friends, reconnecting with an old environment, having something that really just helps you to feel safe or surrounded by support in your life. And that has to do also with the fact that Venus is now in your 3rd house. And so a lot of you might just be connecting with your siblings more, or with neighbors, or with friends, or with your parents, or with people that are in your local environment. You might just be feeling a bit more satisfied with the decision that you made in the past. And a lot of this can also have to do with an investment that you've been working on, or a project you've been working on that starts to reach some kind of a resolution. And again, this could likely have to do with your personal life and less with your work life. And that's because Jupiter is in your 2nd house, and so is Mars this month. And so when we're dealing with the 2nd house, it's all about ownership and investment and the resources that you might need to make things happen. So if you've been waiting on some money to come in, a lot of you have probably started to see that come in May. You might have some job opportunities that are presented to you, but there may be a choice you have to make in regard to that. But that's why Mercury going direct in your 3rd and moving into your 4th is going to help give you some clarity on that decision. It could mean that you have a conversation with someone who knows you very well, and they help you to see something from a different perspective, and they help you to get clear on what you are wanting to do. Now, at the same time, with Jupiter here in your 2nd, it's here most of this year, and this is really about taking investments in yourself, making investments that are important to you. Some of you guys might be waiting for something to pay off that you've previously invested in, that you've been working working on for a while. This month might require some action to get to that finish line or to get to the next phase of what you're working on. But again, overall, with the bottom of your chart really activated, there's going to be a lot of fulfillment and activity in your personal life. Now, if you find yourself questioning some emotions or questioning something that's going on, give yourself a break until the end of the month, because again, by the time that we start Cancer season on June 21st, and by the time that we have the new moon in Cancer on June 28th, this is going to be in your 5th house, which can be very, very fulfilling for you. And so if you feel like you're trying to make sense of something, or something's just weighing heavy on your heart, the emotions that you're holding right now might start to transmute into something very beautiful, something very poetic even. You might find yourself just feeling a bit more inspired to create, or inspired to do something like art or dance or music. And this will likely be very good for your energy, especially if you have been focused on something. This can be a good time to get a break from that, take some time off, or spend some time with people you love, because by the time we get to July and we're fresh into Cancer season, a lot of you are going to start really seeing your investments pay off. And I think you'll be glad to have spent the time that you did with the people you love, because you might be pretty busy getting into later this year. Okay, Pisces, well, have a great June. Thank you everybody for watching these June horoscopes. I appreciate you watching them. And if you would like more content, you can subscribe to my Patreon. I share a June guide that highlights all of the transits, even transits that I did not mention in this. And I also share some insights about those and horoscopes written for each sign as well. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next month.